terrorism is a good way to make business.
Emanuela Del Rey. For many Ghanaians, securing peace within its own borders is probably the current priority. Peace in Boku, for instance, which can't come too soon for those forced out by the killing. People like Abdul Karim Mubarak, carrying the scars of his near-death experience, the death of his friends, he also misses the home that he's been forced to leave.
I feel lonely. Since I left home, about 2-3 years now, I haven't set my eyes on my mom, my siblings. I have to be strong to be able to survive.
How does this violence end?
I don't think either side want to compromise. I am predicting that it's going to get worse than what we have seen, because when either side gets support from these terrorists, they will invite them. I fear the worst may happen.
That's it for this edition of Assignment from Ghana. It was written and produced by me, Ed Butler. The sound mixer was James Beard, and the editor was Penny Murphy.
That was Assignment from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho, and this is CBC Radio 1.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello there, Winnipeg. Just getting set for Information Radio. Thanks for joining us on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube this morning. As mentioned, my name is Marcy Marcusa. We're on air till 8:37 with you with the morning show. And once again, a day of extreme cold. We've got those warnings for Lynn Lake, Leaf Rapids, and Puckatawagan, Brochet, and Tuduli as well. So a little bit up north also. And it extends across southern Manitoba, including Winnipeg. We are expecting wind chills around minus 43 today. Let's say good morning to the team. Corey Funk is back. Good morning, Corey. Corey directs the show and will be on air covering the commute. Good morning, Abby Adeyemi, who's behind the controls, our technical producer. Abby also covers the weather on the show. And good morning to Kevin Nipatebo, who produces our YouTube stream if you're watching the show there. Heather Wells is also in. I start the show the same way every day, so let's find out what's making news with headlines. Here she is now.
Good morning. Well, the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs has concerns about the Manitoba Adolescent Treatment Centre. The program helps youth struggling with mental health issues, but the AMC says there is a lack of oversight. Its concerns were raised after a First Nations youth struggling with mental health issues was discharged from the program. We're going to hear from the health minister coming up. And Canadians are getting serious about flag waving. Winnipeg's only flag store has been buzzing with online and in-person business for the past week, all set off by the tariff dispute with the U.S. president. We'll hear more from some Canadians who are buying flags for the very first time in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
So that is all still ahead in the program. In addition, in the first hour of the show, a Winnipeg teacher who says he was once beaten up, menaced, and the target of racist slurs when he was growing up, today makes sure that he protects his students from the same fate. We're going to hear a special interview with him that was produced through our Sisler students. It's Sisler through the CREATE program. It's a program we've partnered with here at CBC, so we'll have that story for you. In addition, in the program today, can a new fentanyl czar bring change to Canada's drug crisis and soothe relationships with the United States? We're going to dig into that. Of course, this new czar has long history here in Manitoba with the RCMP, so we'll have that interview in the first hour as well. That and lots more right now, though it is time to catch up on World Report.
On Cue with Tom Power.
The Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter Nico Case has written her first memoir, The Harder I Fight, The More I Love You. She'll tell you a little bit about how her memoir reflects on her roots, her move to Canada, and how she found a family in the music scene in the Pacific Northwest. That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report.
Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. At least 28 people, including children, have been injured in Munich after a car drove into a crowd. Some are in serious condition. Police say the incident was deliberate and that the driver has been detained. Officers say the suspect is believed to be a 24-year-old Afghan asylum seeker. Munich is under heavy security. The city is preparing to host a high-level international security conference. It begins tomorrow. Among those attending are U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. In Brussels,
Canada is resolved that we will be there for Ukraine to ensure a just and endurable peace.
Canada's Defence Minister Bill Blair addressing the media. Blair and other NATO defence ministers hold another day of talks about Ukraine. His comment comes a day after U.S. President Donald Trump had a lengthy phone call with his Russian counterpart over the future of the conflict. Trump said Vladimir Putin wants peace and he would soon begin negotiations with the Kremlin. Ukraine's allies say Ukraine must be involved in the talks and there can be no imposition of peace. Here is NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte.
We all want Ukraine to be in the best possible position when those talks start to make sure that they can be concluded successfully. And as also Pete Hegseth said yesterday, the new American Secretary of Defense, it is crucial that whatever comes out of those talks, it is durable.
Rutte says Russian President Vladimir Putin must not be allowed to try to capture Ukrainian territory in the future. Protesters in Tel Aviv are demanding the release of Israeli hostages held by Hamas. The protesters held up huge photos of the captives as they blocked a major highway. Some say they are worried the U.S. president's recent ultimatum will destroy their chances of seeing their loved ones again. Donald Trump has said all Israeli hostages must be released by noon on Saturday. This morning, Hamas says it will release 3 hostages on Saturday, as it agreed to in the current ceasefire agreement. And U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to sign an executive order that would intensify a looming global trade war. It will impose reciprocal tariffs on any country charging duty on U.S. imports. India could be among them. Trump's timing comes as Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on an official visit to the U.S. The CBC's Cameron McIntosh is in Washington. And Cam, India will be among those hardest hit by these tariffs.
Yeah, so let's start with India. India is the 8th largest exporter to the U.S., but has a 9.5% average tariff on American goods going into India. Now, that's an example of the many trade relationships President Trump calls unfair, often singling out China as well, which got hit with a 10% tariff this week. This would be on top of that. President Trump says this is all about leveling the playing field.
The world has taken advantage of the United States for many years. They've charged us massive tariffs that we haven't charged them.
Yes, note the timing here. Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India is in Washington for a meeting with Trump. It's been reported Modi is coming with an offer to cut India's tariffs, maybe even offer cooperation on China to avoid a trade war. President Trump has shown himself to be transactional. Tariffs give him leverage. So is there a deal to be made? Perhaps an example to the rest of the world? We'll see what happens.
How will these reciprocal tariffs work?
Well, the general idea is the U.S. would match tariffs that any other country has placed on American goods. The president's saying if they charge us, we'll charge them. So that could be matching tariffs dollar for dollar on good to good, or more simply charging an average rate on everything, similar to the 25% threat on all goods against Canada. Now, as a free trade partner, Canada doesn't have broad tariffs against the U.S., at least for now. So these may not hit us directly, but economists warn this has potential to impact the global economy, raising prices, and, of course, inflation. Marcia?
All right. Thank you so much, Cam.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Cameron McIntosh in Washington. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is back in Ottawa and about to meet with his cabinet. It's been a busy week for Canadian leaders going abroad to fight U.S. tariffs. For more, let's go to Janice McGregor in Ottawa. All right, Janice, is it time to regroup?
Marcia, the Prime Minister's obviously spent the last few days taking the temperature in Europe, talking to allies, also staring down Donald Trump's threats. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly is off to Paris now, meeting with more allies, including at the Munich Security Conference this weekend and onwards with G20 counterparts in South Africa. But perhaps the most important input into today's cabinet meeting is what Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc brings back from his face-to-face with the incoming Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick yesterday, as well as Trump's economic advisor Kevin Hassett. LeBlanc said Canada's work on the fentanyl crisis is in what he called a positive lane, that this meeting gave them a sense of what metrics the Trump administration will use to review Canada's actions on the border. He said they've got a better sense now of what lies beyond the tariff threats in early March, too.
I'm also optimistic that we have a better understanding of the process that Mr. Lutnick is going through in terms of the April 1st sort of global tariff decisions.
A lot of consulting, but no one's figured out any solutions yet.
So what do the premiers have to show for themselves after they went all the way down to Washington?
Well, the meeting that got the most attention when they cleared their schedules to sit down with two of Trump's more junior officials at the White House may be remembered more for increasing tensions, not decreasing them, with the White House Deputy Chief of Staff chiding the premiers afterwards on social media that there was no agreement, that Canada won't be the 51st state, and that they need to take the president at face value. The premiers did photo ops and scrums for the reporters back home, but otherwise it's not clear yet what the $85,000 that the Council of the Federation spent on hiring a Trump-connected lobbyist to open doors for them actually delivered.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. Huge swaths of the country are dealing with extreme cold or digging out from under mounds of snow this morning. But for the most part, Canadians are being stoic, even in Toronto.
It is what it is, man.
I don't really feel like the snow plowers work fast enough to get things out of the way. So, good luck, everyone.
Wonderful day. I love it when it snows.
Don't you think it's going to be a mess here in Toronto?
It will be. Commuting, driving in town will be terrible.
But I'm not going to be driving. I'll be using public transit and just dress warm.
Snow has caused a long list of delays and cancellations at Toronto's Pearson International Airport. A snowstorm is dumping as much as 40 centimeters on southern Ontario, New Brunswick, and parts of Quebec. Most of Saskatchewan and Manitoba are under an extreme cold warning. Wind chill values there dipping around minus 40. And Environment Canada is warning of bitterly cold wind around BC's Sea to Sky Highway, Whistler, and Pemberton. Canada is home to a quarter of the world's peatlands. They are a crucial carbon sink. They help regulate water. They provide habitat for a wide range of plants and animals. But Canada doesn't even have a comprehensive map of where peatlands are in this country. As Anand Ram reports, new research says these critical parts of our planet are not well protected.
They are very wet, very squishy, and very unstable, but they are absolutely beautiful places.
Lorna Harris, ecosystem scientist at the Wildlife Conservation Society, describes what she calls a highly undervalued ecosystem, peatlands, not just for the biodiversity that flows in and out of these areas, but also for what they do to keep the climate stable.
They're one of our most important land-based carbon stores.
An estimated 600 billion tons of it worldwide, more than forests. But according to a new study by Harris and others in the peer-reviewed journal Conservation Letters, only 17% of peatlands are protected.
Yeah, it's a pity, yeah.
Taufik, who uses one name, is a professor who studies wetlands at IPB University in Indonesia. He says this number is a rough estimate, and that in his region, these ecosystems are under threat by agriculture.
If we, Indonesia, prepare land for farming, for agriculture, the economist way to do that, it's through burning. Because if we clear with machine, it's a cost of money.
He says draining and burning disrupts the peatland and releases that stored carbon. One way to strengthen protections, the authors say, is by empowering communities that steward these areas.
1/4 of global peatlands falling on Indigenous peoples' lands. That's what the paper has found.
Allowing an ecosystem that takes thousands of years to form remain a carbon sink and avoid becoming a source of more carbon emissions. Anand Ram, CBC News, Toronto.
That is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
don't have Toronto's snow today, but in Manitoba, we've got some good prairie cold. Extreme cold across most of the province, the northwest corner, and all the south. Welcome to Thursday, everyone. My name is Marcy Marcusa, and this is Information Radio. You're on the morning show for CBC. We're live in downtown Winnipeg, and Corey will be in with your forecast in a moment. This hour on the program, the latest in our series by filmmaking students over at the CREATE program at Sisler High School in Winnipeg. This morning, a story of a Winnipeg teacher who protects his students as well as educates them, and we'll hear how he was personally motivated because of some things that happened to him as a young person. In addition, since the ceasefire in Gaza, the Israeli military has now stepped up operations in the West Bank. We're going to get an interview here this morning with a journalist who's recently returned to the United States from the West Bank. And what is happening at a local flag store after all 5 former prime ministers called on Canadians to fly the flag this weekend? We'll have that story for you this hour as well. Heather Wells is in with other news and headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a survey of staff in Manitoba's Justice Department suggests a majority of Manitoba Crown prosecutors are suffering from mental health issues. A source shared the 2023 survey results with CBC News. The survey found nearly 2/3 of criminal prosecutors who responded met the diagnostic criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, or depression. We'll hear more of those survey results. And landlords are pushing back on claims some are raising rents unfairly. A report released by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives says the province allows landlords to raise rents above the annual guideline increases too often. We'll hear from Avram Sharak at the Professional Property Owners Association coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
I've got a good food story for you, Heather Wells.
Okay.
You and Corey Funk, who's just coming in studio. Hi, Corey.
Hello.
Now, that is because listeners should know that the two of you are like really great cooks. So like, Corey, you make bread like there's nobody's business.
Corey is great. I'm not so great.
Oh, that is a lie. Your food is amazing. And I know you cook most weekends, I would say. You're putting on some kind of spread for the fam, right?
Yeah, we get together a lot, yeah.
So I did something last night that I haven't done in years.
Mm-hmm.
So like early on in our marriage, I made this fish and I coated it in like Montreal steak spice. Like coated it, like as if it were a rub instead of a spice.
Oh, okay.
It was disgusting. So Jean-Paul was like eating it a bit. That was back in the day. I've significantly improved in the whatever it is, 22 years been married. But last night, for whatever reason, I was cooking, and this is what happens to my head.
You went back to the Montreal steak spice.
I did it with sage last night on some ground turkey. Instead of just adding a bit of sage, I coated it like as if it were some kind of a rub that I needed to add tons of. So I put this, and I'm like, and as soon as I did it, I thought, I'm a bit absent-minded because I was having fun cooking. That's what happens to me. And then we're eating dinner, and it was like, but back in the day, we were newly married. So Jean-Paul was like, I'm thinking he was sort of like, he was just eating it like, no, it's good. Everything's fine. And then we laughed about it after because it was so terrible. But last night I looked at him and I'm just like, we've been married long enough, man. Like you don't have to eat it. And he just kind of looked at me and smiled. And then he tried a few more bites. And then he went to the kitchen and he grabbed some leftovers.
Oh no!
It was terrible. It was like the biggest food fail ever. So we need to we need to hear other people's food fails and food scores because this is kind of that Valentine's Day and stuff. I think a lot of people cook for friends and loved ones, and right.
I can tell you one time I baked cookies.
Yep.
But completely forgot the flour. I put it in the oven. I'm like, these are really liquidy, but I'm sure they'll.
You forgot the flour?
I just forgot the flour.
How did they even hold together?
They didn't. It just turned into a sugary mess, and it was just like a complete. Yeah, I just didn't put in flour.
Slop on a pan.
Yeah, exactly. It was disgusting.
Do you have one, Heather? Even that just comes to mind? Probably not.
Do you know what? It's not so much the cooking or baking part. It's my cake decorating. I can show you a photo. You know how your phone will give you photos from the past? Well, this week one popped up that was like the ugliest birthday cake you have ever seen that I made for my grandson. So yeah.
It's awful. Hard. Do you ever get to the point where you're like trying to write the name of your on the cake? And you're thinking, this won't be hard. I can clearly write in icing, and it just looks like, happy birthday, Cora. All All right, let's get into Corey Funk. That's his actual name. Let's get into what's happening in weather and traffic today.
Yeah, so extreme cold warnings right now are in effect for all of southern Manitoba and also parts of northern Manitoba as well, like the Brochet to Dooley Lake area. So we're talking, at least here in southern Manitoba, wind chills feeling like the minus 40s. And as you get up northwestern Manitoba area there, more like wind chills feeling like it's minus 50. So bundle up today. Very, very cold, frostbite in minutes. Down here in Winnipeg, we are sitting right now at minus 27. And it's going to be warming up to a high of minus 20 today. Wind gusting up to 15 kilometers an hour. I'll have more on the regions coming up later this hour. As for the commute, haven't heard of any major issues out there. If you do see anything going on out there, though, if you're walking, biking, driving, do give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned to start the show today, we have the latest in our series of stories produced by filmmaking students over at the Create program at Sisler High School in collaboration with CBC Manitoba. So this morning, we're about to meet Winnipeg educator Lang Sun. As a child, Sun says he was bullied, menaced, and targeted with racial slurs. Now, today, he makes sure that students in his classroom are protected and respected. Create students Ewan Webster, Joseph Huntington, and Raiden Dumaran produced the piece with support from the CBC. Here now is their story, and the first person you're going to hear from is Jorn Skubovius, a former student of Mr. Sun's.
Well, there's the difference between Mr. Sun and other teachers, that Mr. Sun, you can connect with him. He is truthful, he is kind, he's incredible, just hands down greatest man that I've ever met, and I wish him like every piece of greatness in life.
I've never, ever, I've made it my mission to ever put a negative feeling or thought in a student's head. When I was in China, I was close to my mom until she did leave to Canada. And when I first moved, there were lots of kids that were very welcoming, but there were also other kids that were looking to just antagonize me. I remember in elementary, I still remember the face and the group, but they would relentlessly bully me. So there was a guy, and he would beat me up. He would pick fights. In the middle of winter, he would push me down to the snow and wash snow in my face, do face washing, just a lot of physical bullying. And I think I was walking back home from school, and somebody in a car just rolled down the window and just shouted a slur at me. It did make me in that moment just feel that I didn't belong. And the reason why I'm mindful of how I teach today to students is that they may have gone through that. Everything a teacher says is permanent, lasting, and anything that you say negatively could really, impact a student for the worse. You may even change the direction of a student's life with a couple of words.
Well, Mr. Sun has meant a lot to me as a student and growing up, because he helped me improve my art and just made me feel like a better person and started making me realize that I wanted to become a teacher just like him, because I could see him the way he would treat his students, that they were like friends, but he was still a really good leader and he could teach us new things every single day. And I admired that and inspired me to become an art teacher in my future. So having such a sensitive childhood made me realize that all these people from different walks of life, I don't know their stories, but I'm going to treat them as if they've gone through the same rough path as I have.
So those are the voices of Winnipeg teacher Lang Sun, and before him, former student Jorn Skubovius. And the piece was produced by Create students, Ewan Webster, Joseph Huntington, and Raiden Dumaran, with support from CBC Manitoba. For more on this story and all of the stories being produced by the students in Create, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
The United States has been ripped off.
The stories that matter.
Canada will be responding
as they happen.
We must put Canada first.
At home and around the world.
We don't need the products that they have.
And what they mean to you. For news you can trust.
We're coming to you live.
Stay with CBC News.
Stream anytime. CBC News.
Well, the cold's causing problems in the Brandon School Division. They've just announced they will not operate buses outside the city of Brandon for today all day, but school is all on and buses will run within the city of Brandon. And we do have that extreme cold warning that extends across northwestern Manitoba and also here all across the south, including Brandon and Winnipeg and all your main centers. It's minus 27 in the city of Winnipeg right now, and it is mainly clear. Well, up next on the program, the new fentanyl czar in this country is no stranger to Manitoba, where he was RCMP Deputy Commissioner and Commanding Officer from 2012 to 2016. Kevin Brousseau served in the RCMP for over 20 years and recently as Deputy National Security and Intelligence Advisor to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He told reporters what his hopes are for this job.
I'm hoping to be able to give an intensity to the work being carried out by thousands of men and women in this country and the United States, trying to deal with the real public safety and national security crisis that is fentanyl. Bringing that integrated approach, bringing the teams together, ensuring the collaboration, ensuring the communication is happening at officials level on both sides of the border in communities across the country.
Now, his new position, which was announced on Tuesday, was created in part because U.S. President Donald Trump has concerns over border security with Canada. To talk more, though, about the position and Brousseau, we have Stephanie Carvin on with us via Zoom. She's an assistant professor at the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University. She's also author of the book Stand on Guard, Reassessing Threats to Canada's National Security. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So we heard obviously a little bit about Kevin Brousseau and his background, and in Manitoba many people will know his name. But can you tell us a few more of the reasons why he was picked for this position?
Well, other than the police background that you've highlighted, I think there's three other important reasons here. Firstly, that he is also a lawyer. He has a master's degree in law from Harvard University, of all places, in both corporate law and Indigenous law. Secondly, he is someone who has an intelligence background as well. And we know that with the United States' kind of overall approach to this, they want more intelligence sharing. They want more of the intelligence agencies involved. So having been the Deputy National Security and Intelligence Advisor puts him in a good place to do that. And finally, I think what's important is that he's has been an Associate Deputy Minister, right? And that's an important role just simply because he understands the bureaucracy, but also the areas that he served in, which were transportation and fisheries. What's important there is that those are jurisdictions where there's both federal and provincial overlap, right? So to a certain extent, this is going to help him because the drug issue, most of the laws and instruments to actually combat those issues lie with the provinces. So his ability to kind of understand the kind of federal landscape in the country is there. He's actually, we can kind of talk about the ridiculousness of having a czar. We don't really do czars in Canada. But if you had to appoint one in this area, you could do worse than Mr. Brousseau.
I was going to ask you about the title. We asked actually the federal trade minister was on our show a few weeks ago, and it was one of the questions we had for him, which was, why are we using fentanyl czar? Are we just mimicking language out of the United States? Like, well, what sense are you making of that?
Almost, that's exactly the reason. We are absolutely mimicking the language out of the United States. I mean, I have heard Canadian officials say to me, just kind of on background, that look, this is kind of the equivalent of a commissioner. And if you look at the way that Mr. Brousseau was appointed yesterday, it was through an order in council, which would be the equivalent. But I mean, this isn't the first area where we've seen Canada mimic U.S. language. In the agreement that was reached earlier this month between Canada and Donald Trump, we talked about intelligence directives. Well, Canada doesn't have intelligence directives. Those things don't exist. They're purely American, right? So I think in the end, it ended up being a prime ministerial directive to kind of, appease, again, the United States. So I don't think this is the first time this has happened, and I certainly don't think it'll be the last. It is a weird title, and I saw all kinds of suggestions online with regards to a czar, whether or not, the Pokeroo should be the czar or Casey and Finnegan from Mr. Dressup. I think my favorite was the idea that if there's a fentanyl czar, should we also have a fentanyl Rasputin? So it's kind of a funny comment. But look, this is not to belittle the issue. Fentanyl is serious. It kills many people in this country. And if this person, whether they're a commissioner or a czar, can actually address some of the concerns we have here, it would be good.
So how are they going to do that, though? Because, I mean, I think a lot of people are thinking we have had an opioid crisis for years. We already have a public safety minister. And I'm thinking about, what happened in Vancouver with fentanyl. And then I remember when it came to Manitoba, and then it's morphed, and then it's changed. And then during the pandemic, and it really took hold. I mean, these problems are not new. So is there something new in Brosseau's mandate that we'll see him tackle the problem in a new way?
I think, okay, let's be optimistic here. So if we take the optimistic view, he is someone who is going to be able to bring I think everyone to the table, right? It is a convening position. Mr. Brosseau will not be busting down doors himself, right? He's not going to be burning down meth labs himself. But at the end of the day, he can bring together the different actors that have responsibilities in this area that were defined by this prime ministerial directive. So intelligence, federal policing, local policing, provincial policing, all these different kinds of things. And if he can even just get people identifying where the blockages are, where we can act more efficiently, I think that will be a net benefit for Canada. Whether or not we will actually see improvement, I'm not entirely sure. One of the things I would note is that in Canada, we have been trying to treat fentanyl as a public health issue as opposed to a law and order issue. And I think there's absolutely a room for the law and order, in solving the fentanyl crisis. But this is a many-layered problem. And so it's going to be really difficult to solve, and certainly difficult to show results by March 4th, which is, of course, Canada's deadline.
That was the other question, what kind of result could he show? How closely is he expected to be working with U.S. counterparts on this?
Pretty closely. And I think this is actually really the key thing. And I don't know if it was written specifically in the mandate that he was given through an order in council earlier or yesterday. But I mean, honestly, I think the first thing he and his, hopefully he's been given some kind of staff, will be working on is compiling a list of all the things that Canada has done, is doing, and will be doing in the next couple of weeks, and being able to show U.S. counterparts what those things are, to kind of demonstrate Canada's seriousness in addressing these issues. That's why we're using the term czar, right? Is because we want Americans to understand what that is in their kind of own bureaucratic context. And I think it's important for, maybe it is just a weird kind of mirroring language thing, but that's going to be an important part of this. Whether or not that will work is a very separate question, though.
I think a lot of Canadians are also trying to square how he's going to be tied to the border, because he's lumped into, obviously, his position is lumped into the trade issues, and yes, fentanyl, but then if we're talking about specifically drugs crossing the border, do we understand where he's going to be even based? Is he based on stateside? Is he based at a border base? Will he be all over the place? As you said, we don't even know if he has staff yet, I guess.
Yeah, I wonder if he knows. So I think he will be based predominantly in Ottawa, but it wouldn't surprise. I mean, he made a point yesterday of it, I believe, attending a border checkpoint with the Minister of Public Safety for the announcement. So it wouldn't surprise me if for the next couple of weeks he's going to be traveling quite a bit, going to the hot spots where this fentanyl is basically where the chemicals that come in to make it are being, coming into the country in the various ports, where, various border crossings. But I think one of the things he said yesterday in kind of being introduced to Canadians is that one of the first things he wants to do is go to the U.S. and meet his counterparts as quickly as possible, right? So I think this is going to be an important thing. And certainly we also saw Premier of Alberta, Daniel Steele, and Ontario Premier Doug Ford call for this position. So it also wouldn't surprise me if he meets with a lot of the provincial leaders as well.
Danielle Smith, I think you misspoken.
Danielle Smith, I'm so sorry. Pardon me.
We've all got steel on our brains.
It is the steel tariffs.
Oh
my goodness.
We get it.
Absolutely. My apologies.
I also misspoke and called you assistant professor instead of associate professor, Stephanie. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Oh, not at all. I'm glad we're all misspeaking together as one. We need a misspeaking czar. That'll be the next thing.
Take care. Thank you.
Cheers.
That's Stephanie Carvin, Associate Professor at the Norman Patterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University, up early and on Zoom with us this morning. We're coming up to news time at 6:30. You're listening to Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. This is your morning show, and coming up we have business news as always. Christly Ramlakan is going to be joining us. It's a regular feature on our program. And then a little bit later in the program, I want to mention something coming up after 7 o'clock. Winnipeg's Craig Block was damaged last month when Main Street, the fire happened on Main Street at the Sutherland Hotel, because that's the neighboring business. It burned, of course, the Sutherland quite severely and was ultimately demolished. But the Craig Block is an important part of Manitoba's Black history, and we're going to hear more about that. That's coming up after 7. Right now, though, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is minus 27, and that extreme cold still coming on strong. Most of the province under an extreme cold warning right now. In Winnipeg, it'll be sunny. The wind chill this morning will feel like minus 43, but our high this afternoon is minus 20. A recent survey of Manitoba's criminal crown attorneys found the majority of those responding felt they have unmanageable workloads. A source shared the results of the 2023 survey. CBC did not see the report but confirmed details with the union that commissioned the study. The survey found nearly two-thirds of prosecutors surveyed met the diagnostic criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, or depression. The Manitoba Association of Crown Attorneys says problems in the Crown Law Service have not been addressed. Manitoba Justice Minister Matt Wiebe blames the previous PC government.
It's such a clear indictment of how the previous government treated our crowns, how they treated our justice system, how they disrespected those who do this work every single day.
The minister says he has a meeting scheduled with the Crown attorneys next week. Canada's premiers are calling their trip to Washington a success. It ended with a surprise visit to the White House, where the premiers met with top Trump staffers. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is also now back in Ottawa, about to meet with his cabinet. It's been a busy week for Canadian leaders going ahead and going abroad to fight U.S. tariffs. We'll hear the latest on that story coming up on World Report at 7. But in Winnipeg, waving our flag.
Raise and lower the flag.
Business has been brisk at the city's only flag store over the last week, set off by U.S. President's threat of tariffs on Canada. Greg Barker was at the flag shop on Osborne yesterday.
Probably a lot of people. I haven't had a Canadian flag on my fence ever, and now's a good time to do it, so we can all show our feelings about the country.
Anne Harwood bought flags for her window and her planters.
We're not for sale. Yeah, that really hurts. Yeah.
Harwood says it's also important to her to know the flags she bought are made in Canada. Saturday is Flag Day. You can hear more on this story coming up in the next half hour right here on Information Radio. The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs is raising concerns about a program helping youth struggling with mental health issues. AMC says the Manitoba Adolescent Treatment Centre lacks oversight. The concerns come after a First Nations youth was discharged from the program without a diagnosis, still struggling with mental health. The Assembly says it has sent a letter to the province. Health Minister Uzoma Asaguera says they contacted the family.
We're taking a look at, the points of contact the families had throughout the healthcare system to ensure that as we move forward, we're meeting the needs of not only this youth and their family, but the needs of families who come into contact with these services.
AMC wants to see independent oversight at the centre and consistent supports for all First Nations communities. The province says it is reviewing the Residential Tenancies Act after complaints some landlords are getting unfair exemptions from rent guidelines. A report by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives says the province allows landlords to raise rents above the annual guideline increases too often. It found some landlords got approval to jack rents up by 18%. Landlords say they must prove their expenses to qualify to charge more. Mintu Sandhu is Public Service Delivery Minister.
We are concerned what we are seeing, and we want to make sure when we review this act, we get the sides, so both sides, renter's side and as well as landlord's side.
The NDP government introduced legislation last fall to make it harder for landlords to increase rents above the guideline, but the bill did not become law. Well, it is a good start for Canada at the Four Nations Face-Off tournament.
Marner to work. He's in. Marner! It's Marner! In overtime!
In Montreal last night, that is the tournament getting underway. Canada defeating Sweden 4-3 in overtime. Toronto's Mitch Marner scoring that winning goal. Sidney Crosby with 3 assists, or as my colleague Darren Bernhardt says, 3 assists. Next up on the schedule, the United States plays Finland tonight. And then on Saturday, it's Canada against the U.S. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Clever.
Acids.
Clever. Darren Bernhardt's going to get a couple shout-outs in the show this morning because we've got that story coming up on the Craig block. We'll do an interview about it, but he wrote a wonderful piece about it as well, the history of the Craig block.
Absolutely.
As well, so people can go back and look at that on our website. That was more right around when the Sutherland, was burning, that fire was happening. So, all right, thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
And thank you, Darren. Let's get into what's happening in the forecast now. It's time for the regional forecast at CBC Manitoba, and Corey Funk has those details this morning.
Yeah, here's a quick look at how cold it is out there. So our hotspot right now is the Paw, minus 27.
Woo, get out the sunscreen.
Paw. Everyone go there for your winter vacation. And then the cold spot right now is Thompson at minus 39. That's without the wind chill.
That's crazy.
Right now. So extreme cold warning is in effect, as you can imagine, for much of the province. All of southern Manitoba is under an extreme cold warning. We're talking wind chills feeling like minus 40 down here, and up north, based on what Thompson's looking like, wind chills feel more like minus 50 this morning. So bundle up, frostbite in minutes. So right now, let's start it in Thompson right now. So Thompson, you are sitting at minus 39. Today you can see a mix of sun and cloud with 30% chance or so of flurries. Your high today, you'll be warming up to a balmy minus 22. Also down south here, Brandon, you're at minus 36 right now. So not that much warmer than Thompson. And it's going to be sunny for you today, and you're heading for a high today of minus 21. Dauphin, you're at minus 29 right now. Mix of sun and cloud today, clearing late this afternoon. High of minus 21. Up in Churchill, it's minus 36 right now with some ice crystals. Mix of sun and cloud. About a 30% chance of flurries for you today. You're going to be warming up to a high of minus 24. And right now in Winnipeg, we're sitting at minus 27. And our high today is going to be minus 20. As for the commute, haven't heard of any major issues out there on the highways, on the roads. Sidewalks were lovely on my way in this morning. Bike lanes as well. So if you bundle up right, I was sweaty on my run in today. So if you can make it places comfortably if you just keep moving. That's the key. If you see anything else though, you want to tell me about your commute, give me a call 204-788-3093.
And just to add, no rural buses in the Brandon School Division operating today, and that's because of extreme cold. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
All right, business news now. Chris Lee Ramla-Kensing, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So we're getting some insight into what the Bank of Canada is thinking if there's a drawn-out trade war with the United States. And what can you tell us about what they're thinking?
Yeah, so the uncertainty it brings, even if the threat isn't realized, weighed heavily on the Bank of Canada's Governing Council when it decided to cut interest rates last month. And the central bank released a summary of its deliberations yesterday, and the document offers a glimpse into the council's discussions ahead of the rate cut when it lowered its policy rate by 0.25 percentage point to 3%. So the Governing Council had a long discussion on the impact of prolonged trade uncertainty. It also considered survey data from last month that showed some businesses were already considering shifting investments to the U.S. And the report says all of that supported the case for a lower policy rate. Now, the impact of prolonged what-ifs on the Canadian economy and the different scenarios, tariffs, and any retaliatory measures would present meant the Bank of Canada was not comfortable, though, providing insight on its interest rate plans moving forward.
To another story, a large oil company is facing layoffs right now. What are the details here?
Yes, so Chevron plans to lay off 15 to 20% of its global workforce by the end of 2026. The U.S. oil company is trying to cut costs, simplify its business, and complete a major acquisition. So the number 2 U.S. oil producer has faced production challenges, including cost overruns and delays in a large Kazakhstan oil field project. Meanwhile, its $53 billion deal to acquire oil producer Hess and gain a foothold in Guyana's lucrative oil field is in limbo because of a court battle with a larger rival, ExxonMobil. Now, Chevron says it is targeting up to $3 billion in cost cuts by leveraging technology, selling assets, and changing how and where work is performed. And so at the end of 2023, Chevron employed just over 40,000 people. A layoff of 20% would mean 8,000 jobs. And those figures exclude another roughly 5,400 employees of Chevron service stations.
And how are some food companies reacting to the trade tensions with the U.S.? You've got some stories this morning, hey?
Yes, so, some multinational food companies are working hard to highlight their Canadian-made products amid this Buy Canadian push. So Canadian viewers of the Super Bowl may have noticed a new ad from Kraft Heinz. The ad set in the company's Montreal factory was put together in less than a week, and the factory employs more than 1,000 people and has 42 production lines, including Philadelphia cream cheese, Kraft peanut butter, Heinz ketchup, Kraft salad dressing, and Classico pasta sauce. So many Canadians are looking for ways to support domestic businesses that could be hurt by tariffs. So experts say it's a good time for brands to promote their Canadian products. But consumers looking to shop local are finding it's not cut and dry. There are several different labels depending on how a product is made. So brands are clamoring to prove their Canadianness at the grocery store. And multinational brands are likely concerned their sales could suffer because they're not seen as Canadian. So other large US-based food companies with manufacturing footprints here in Canada include Hershey, PepsiCo, and its subsidiary Frito-Lay, and Mondelez International. That's the maker of Dad's Cookies, Oreos, and Ritz crackers.
It's funny now, right? Because a lot of people are like making those lists of their favorites and kind of comparing, and lots of sharing online as well of those lists. What's going on in the markets this morning?
In Europe, stocks are higher amid a flurry of earnings and economic data. Germany is up, the UK is down, France is up. In Asia, markets are rising. Japan is up, but Shanghai and Hong Kong are both still down right now. Oil is down 93 cents to $70.44 US per barrel. Gold is up $14.40 to $2,918.20 US per ounce. And the dollar is up 0.05 of a cent to 69.95 cents US.
All right, Crystal, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
That is Crystal Ramlicam with our business news. Well, I posted a Facebook question this morning prompting you to write there on my Marcy Marcusa page, which acts as a show page during the show hours, or you can call us, 788-3205. The question is about Saturday and whether or not you're going to show your Canadian pride or if you've already started. And if you are, show us. Take a pic of the flag you bought, or is it a T-shirt or something else you're doing to show the pride? Or you can call us 788-3205. I mentioned Saturday because Joe Clark, Kim Campbell, Jean Chrétien, Paul Martin, and Stephen Harper jointly wrote this open letter encouraging Canadians to fly our flag with pride. And they said, quote, show the world that we're proud of our history and proud of our country on February 15th. Saturday. So some Winnipeggers are already heeding the call, as you might have heard in the news. Matthew Hobson is a sales associate at the Flag Shop in Winnipeg and South Osborne. He spoke to CBC's Felicia Adam.
We've had a huge demand. We actually just launched our website here in the last week, and there's been a flurry online when we're closed, and then as soon as the door opens, the phone's ringing with people asking for Canadian flags this last few days.
And why do you think there's such a demand all of a sudden?
People are motivated to show their pride in our country. I know there was the letter from the former Prime Ministers recommending people fly Canadian flags this weekend with Flag Day. So that's obviously spurred people's attention to it. But yeah, people are rallying around being Canadian. Every year leading up to Canada Day, there's a run on Canada flags. Everyone wants to make sure their flags look good for Canada Day. In terms of other runs, for national flags, we get runs for the World Cup. We've had runs on the Ukraine flag due to what's going on over there. But in terms of a Canadian flag, this is a good rallying cry to bring attention to the Canada flag and have proud Canadians flying their flags in their homes.
And tell me just about the morning here. It's been busy. Just describe what's been happening.
The to-do list is getting longer, not shorter this morning here. The phone's been ringing off the hook. As I mentioned, our website's live. We're getting online orders at the same time, so it's been quite a busy morning, and we're selling quite a few Canadian flags.
And do you expect sales to continue this way, as this sentiment of buy local, buy Canadian, Canadian pride, do you think that'll continue on past, let's say, Canada Day?
I think so. I think everyone is rallying around it and realizing what it is to be Canadian, and that being proud to be Canadian. So I see that continuing here as we go into the summer, where our sales naturally pick up when people are switching out their flags for nice, clean flags leading up to Canada Day as well.
Compared to last year, how many Canadian flags would you say were sold?
Well, we sell thousands of Canadian flags a year. We haven't looked at numbers yet. We've been too busy to do that yet. But I would say the one common thread that we've noticed is a lot of people buying smaller Canadian flags because they're wanting to show their pride for the country, and they live in an apartment. So we've been selling a lot more smaller flags. So they're not necessarily going up on flagpoles, but people are hanging them in their apartment windows or something like that.
Matthew Hobson with the Flag Shop in Winnipeg. Now, while she was there, Felicia also got to talk to a couple of customers who were coming in to get their own Canadian flags, starting with Anne Harwood.
I'm here to get my Canadian flags and support the Prime Ministers who encouraged us to do that. And just wanting to let our neighbours to the south know that they've really ticked us off.
And when you look at the flags, you ask the question, is this made in Canada? Is that important for you?
Yes.
Why is that?
I just want to know that Canadians have made them, and we don't have to rely on other countries for that, for this type of thing.
And when have you started to, take this more seriously in terms of buying local and buying Canadian and promoting, Canada?
I've always been, I have always cared about that, but now I'm zeroing in on it. Yeah, I have some shopping bags that say I shop local. I've been using them for a number of years, so it matters, but it really matters now.
Tell me what you're buying right now.
I'm getting this one for my window, and then I'll just stick these out in a planter or whatever as well.
Is this for Flag Day, or is this just in general you would like to have these up?
I'll put it up for this weekend, and I usually put one up for Canada Day in the summer, but it's a big one, and so this actually suits my purposes better.
And last question for you, but what do you hope to, when you hang these flags up, what's the message that you want to portray here?
We're not for sale. Yeah, that really hurts. Yeah.
Perfect. Is there anything else you wanted to say just about, what's happening right now? Or?
It's great that we're all pulling together, and I'm really pleased that the premiers are all down there today, and being unified really matters. Yeah, we love our country.
Oh, Greg Barker.
Why are you here today?
Well, like probably a lot of people, I haven't had a Canadian flag on my fence ever, and now's a good time to do it.
Why is that?
So we can all show our feelings about the country.
And, recently that's become just a larger sentiment,
yeah.
Buy local, buy Canadian pride, how important is that for you?
Canadians are always quietly patriotic, and maybe it's time to make a little more noise.
And just tell me about what you bought today.
Oh, I bought a small flag and a pole to stick up on my fence so people can see it.
What do you hope to, I know you said it's to show your feelings and all that stuff, but what are you hoping that this does, when your neighbors, let's say, see it?
Well, one person won't do much, but if somebody sees it and say, hey, I should do that. Maybe a few more people, and just to show, stop being so quiet.
I love Canadians. You can hear it in that man's voice, right? It's like we're sort of still soft and polite and quiet about it, but yet he's there, showing his patriotism and buying flags. But like he said, we are not a nation necessarily that screams our patriotism at the top of our lungs in all moments, but we're in a moment. Are you in a moment? What are you doing out there? Are you buying a flag? Are you buying a shirt? Are you thinking about showing your Canadian pride? That was Greg Barker, and before him we also heard from Anne Harwood. They were both buying flags. They were speaking to CBC's Felicia Adam at the flag store in South Osborne. So we would love it if you call us and tell us whether or not you're taking part in all of this. If you've bought something, if you're going to pay attention on Saturday, the 15th, the day that the former prime ministers, said think of putting up a flag. Let us know why you're taking part or not, and let us know if how you're taking part. So you can write on Facebook, and that is my Marcy Marcusa page, or you can call us at 788-3205.
The United States has been ripped off.
The stories that matter.
Canada will be responding
as they happen.
We must put Canada first.
At home and around the world.
We don't need the products that they have.
And what they mean to you. For news you can trust.
We're coming to you live.
Stay with CBC News.
Stream anytime. CBC News.
It's 9 minutes to 6 o'clock now. 9 minutes to 7 o'clock on 89.3 FM. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You are with CBC this morning. We've got an extreme cold warning across southern Manitoba and also parts of the north, including Lynn, Brochet, and Tuduli Lake. The wind chills are going to be minus 40 here across the south, and in the north, minus 45 to minus 50 with wind chills. So another frigid day. We knew the whole week would be like this, and so the forecast is holding. Next on the program, let's look at international news right now. In the shadow of a shaky ceasefire in Gaza, the West Bank violence is increasing. In mid-January, Israel launched what it calls, quote, Operation Iron Wall. According to the UN, 40,000 people have been displaced. And to talk about this morning, Thea Chattel is with us, freelance journalist, and she recently returned to the United States from the West Bank. We've reached her in New York City this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us. Can you give us a bit more of the context here about what triggered this latest escalation in the West Bank?
Yeah, absolutely. I would have to say there are a number of political factors here at play, but primarily the Israeli far right feels emboldened as a result of the Trump administration's recent rhetoric on both Gaza and the West Bank. And additionally, the Israeli far right views Israel's outcome of the war in Gaza as a complete failure. After October 7th, the national consensus in Israel was that they wanted three primary things out of the war. First, they wanted Israel to militarily reoccupy Gaza like they did before 2005. And what people often forget is that formerly there were Israeli settlements built inside of Gaza, like the territory, that were deconstructed in 2005 when Israel decided to unilaterally withdraw. If your listeners saw on the news ever protest happening outside of Gaza by Israelis, either blocking or destroying food aid attempting to enter the Strip, those protesters were calling for the resettlement of the territory by Israelis. Additionally, they wanted the expulsion of Palestinians from their territory. And as we see in this tenuous ceasefire agreement, none of those three goals have been met by the Israeli government or its armed forces. And so what we're seeing is the Israeli far right, with leaders like Ben Gvir and Smotrich, are calling for Israeli forces to shift their fighting as they're withdrawing from Gaza and to move over to the West Bank, which in some cases is only 10 to 20 miles away. And that's exactly what we're seeing.
Thea, can you give us a bit more detail on what communities are being affected primarily by this Operation Iron Wall then? Can you elaborate a bit?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I, having witnessed this violence and latest round of escalation firsthand, and really the images that we're seeing come out of Jenin, Tulkarem, Nablus, three major cities in the West Bank, are really starting to parallel what we've seen live streamed over the past 18 months from Gaza. I saw Palestinians fleeing from the territory, carrying everything they could on their heads because they were fleeing to a safer place to go. This is an impending... Yeah, sure, go ahead.
I was just asking about the community. So you're saying Jenin is probably the largest, correct?
Yeah, so primarily the fighting is taking place inside of refugee camps in Jenin, in Tukaram. They're really densely populated and they're filled with civilians. And because the fighting is taking place in close quarters and Israel has imposed a siege in many cases, people are fleeing. There's no food, schools are closed, there's no healthcare, and things are getting really, really bad.
Sorry, I interjected there. Where are they going for safety then?
Yeah, I think people often forget, and sometimes I do as well, but the West Bank really is not that large of a territory. Without the checkpoints or roadblocks, one could drive from the top to the bottom in about like an hour and a half. It's also a tight-knit community, right? So people, as they're fleeing the fighting and looking for shelter in other areas, oftentimes they're fleeing to relatives' homes in other cities in the West Bank or to other refugee camps. And remember, these populations are filled with people who were either the descendants of or people who were displaced in 1948 or 1967 during rounds of fighting with Israel.
Fighting also broke out last summer in the West Bank as well. How would you compare what we're seeing right now, the present situation, to that?
Yeah, it did. I was in the West Bank during that round of escalation as well. And really, I can only say that it is absolutely unprecedented. This level of military operation inside the West Bank is something we haven't seen since the Second Intifada back in the early 2000s. A few weeks ago, Israel launched an airstrike in Jenin and killed multiple Palestinians and injured many more. And what we're seeing is Israel using almost the same military strategies that it was widely condemned for using inside of Gaza, but just switching it to the West Bank this time. So there's there's firefights happening with elements of armed Palestinian resistance and the Israeli forces. And really, this fighting is only going to continue to escalate as long as this rhetoric comes out of Washington and Jerusalem.
Thank you very much for your report today, and especially given that you've just come from there. We really appreciate you being on CBC with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
That is Thea Chattal. She's a freelance journalist. She joined us this morning from New York City. But as we mentioned, she's just arrived in the U.S. after reporting on the ground in the West Bank. It is now 4 minutes to 7 o'clock. We're going to get to our local headlines here in Manitoba in a moment. But first, we've got a call on the listener line. And this came because we're asking you, how are you showing your Canadian pride? Show us. And why are you doing it, or why not, if you're choosing not to? But we're hearing about a lot of people buying flags. Here's a call we got.
Hi there. My name is Leanne Senyek. Phone number is 20. Yep, we will definitely be putting our flag up. We always have our Canadian flag up, but we are going to replace it with one of the ones we got from the Parliament buildings. We did get one of those by request from the government, so we will be hanging that one, that very large one, very proudly. The other thing that we've already done is changed all of our social media accounts to represent our Canadian pride, and I will be flooding my social media with many pictures of being a proud Canadian.
Thanks for the call, 788-3205. We're wondering whether or not you're planning on flying a flag and why. Corey's got a bit of what he calls a fun fact to add to this.
Okay, so when I heard this listener line, I didn't know that you could actually just request a free flag. So I went to look, and it said there's a long waiting period. And on the website, I don't know if this is a typo, but it's the government website. It says there's a 100-year wait right now for flags. I'm guessing maybe 100 days, but it literally says a 100-year wait right now on the website.
You got to call, I think.
Yeah, I got to find that out. But it does say that on the government website, which is very funny.
Thanks, Corey.
No problem.
While you're here, traffic, quiet?
Oh, actually, shoot, I was going to bring it up.
Is there something? Okay, let's go to Heather first then, and we'll update that. Heather's got our headlines. Corey's running around doing 3 jobs this morning. Heather, what's developing in our news center?
Good morning. Yes, landlords are pushing back on claims that some are raising rents unfairly. A report released by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives says the province allows landlords to raise rents above the annual guideline increases too often. We're going to hear from Avram Sharak at the Professional Property Owners Association. And the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs has concerns about the Manitoba Adolescent Treatment Centre. The program helps youth who are struggling with mental health issues, but AMC says there's a lack of oversight, and a First Nations youth who was struggling with mental health issues was discharged from that program. We'll hear that story and other news from Manitoba coming up at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Now let's go back to Corey with
Yes,
that traffic tip. Yeah.
So north and southbound lanes of Arlington between Notre Dame and McDermott are closed right now out due to a fire. So you can't go down Arlington and that. You want to find an alternate route if you head usually through that area.
Speaking of fires, Winnipeg's Craig Block was damaged last month when its Main Street neighbor, the Sutherland Hotel, burned down. The block is an important part of Manitoba's Black history. There's a web article about this you can read about, and we have interviews on this coming up after 7 o'clock, so stay tuned. In addition, the next hour, while most drivers might fear sliding on the ice, some drivers live for it. They say it makes winter fun in a controlled environment. That's the latest story in our Show Us Your Winter series, so stay tuned. And this week we've been hearing from healthcare professionals on the show. They say emergency rooms aren't the only ones struggling when it comes to wait times and delays. Personal care homes are struggling as well, and that's got a ripple effect through the entire system. That nurse who works in HSCER talked about the number of people there. Feels sometimes like a holding zone for PCHs. We're going to look at that aspect of things coming up.
Today on The Current.
We're kind of in limbo right now. I think everyone's at the whim of what Trump's going to do next.
For years, Canada has been falling behind on productivity and innovation, and business leaders say now, in the face of tariffs, is the time to tackle the issue head on. How to insulate Canada's economy from threats, coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Police in Munich say at least 28 people have been injured by a vehicle that was driven into a crowd. It happened at a trade union rally. Police say they suspect this was an intentional act. Freelance reporter Rebecca Collard has more from Berlin.
An intersection in Munich now strewn with debris. A smashed car and a child's stroller laying on the ground. According to police, a car was driven into a crowd around 10:30 a.m. local time. A police spokesman says the person driving the vehicle has been detained. The suspect is a 24-year-old Afghan asylum seeker, and police say there is no longer any danger to the public. The attack came just hours before leaders and dignitaries arrived for the annual Munich Security Conference, including U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The city is already under tighter than usual security. The attack also comes just 10 days before German federal elections, where migration and security have been top issues. Rebecca Collard for CBC News, Berlin.
Ukraine's allies say Kyiv must not be kept out of talks aimed at ending the war with Russia. NATO defense ministers meeting in Brussels say any peace must be enduring and not imposed on Ukraine. The comments come a day after Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin had a long phone call over the conflict. The U.S. president says he will start negotiations with the Kremlin soon. Crystal Gomansing has more.
It's not Americans who protected Ukraine 3 years ago when Russia started full-scale invasion. It was not American Marines who stopped Russians near Kyiv. It was Ukrainians.
Ukrainian MP Alexei Goncharenko says Ukraine will not be sidelined in talks about its future and ending the war. That conviction was echoed today by NATO defense ministers meeting in Brussels, including Canada's Bill Blair.
It is essential from our perspective that Ukraine must be part of that negotiation, and that we're going to continue to support them to enable them to be in the strongest possible position to achieve that just and sustainable peace.
Goncharenko also wants sustainable peace, but says giving up Ukrainian territory is not acceptable.
Part of these territories can be occupied by Russians for some time, but it doesn't mean that we will sometimes in future accept it. No, it will never happen. Never ever.
NATO is also feeling the pressure from the U.S. for alliance members to increase defense spending to 5% of GDP. Many nations, including Canada, are not hitting the current requirement of 2%. Mark Rutte is NATO's Secretary General.
We have to spend more, not only because the US expects that, because they expect Europe to take its and pay its fair share.
An investment he says is needed in light of increasing global threats. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, London.
The provincial governor in Congo says M23 fighters could trigger a humanitarian crisis. Jean-Jacques Parousi-Siddiqui is the governor of South Kivu. He says the Rwandan-backed rebels are inching closer.
It will be really a big tragedy in the sense that we are turning around 2,800,000 citizens. It's huge. And the attitude of this population is South Kivu population resistance.
He says traffic is suspended between North and South Kivu. That is causing a shortage of some goods. The M23 fighters declared a ceasefire at the start of this month after they seized control of Goma. But Congo's government says its troops have been attacked several times in the past week. Protesters in Tel Aviv are demanding the release of Israeli hostages still held by Hamas. Protesters held up huge photos of the captives as they blocked a major highway. Some say they are worried the U.S. president's recent ultimatum will destroy their chances of seeing their loved ones again. Donald Trump has said all Israeli hostages must be released by noon on Saturday. This morning, Hamas says it will release 3 hostages on Saturday, as it agreed to in the current ceasefire agreement. Canada's premiers are calling their trip to Washington a success. After a surprise trip to the White House yesterday, some premiers are saying they're staying in the U.S., and as Kate McKenna reports, they want to make sure their anti-tariff message is heard.
We had a very constructive conversation.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford left the White House saying he and the other premiers had positive meetings with 2 top Trump staffers, Deputy Chief of Staff Jim Blair and Senior Hiring Advisor Sergio Gore.
Well, it just shows the relationship that we have and the respect they have regarding Canada. And they've said it numerous times, how they respect Canada.
But that respect was not on display after the meeting, when Blair posted on social media saying he'd take the Premier's comments about not wanting to become the 51st state back to the president, but also that he didn't agree with their position, and that the best way to understand what President Trump plans to do is to take what he says at face value. Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc also met with Trump's pick for Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick. He shared what's being done to boost border security. Trump has said Canada can avoid blanket tariffs if it cracks down on fentanyl trafficking.
We started the conversation by discussing our shared priorities around border security and the fight against fentanyl. We took stock of the good work that has been done around illegal migration. We spoke about the appointment of our fentanyl czar, who will be in Washington in a few days.
Some premiers are staying in Washington to continue holding meetings, trying to flood the zone with the big anti-tariff push. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Washington.
Huge swaths of the country are dealing with extreme cold or digging out from under mounds of snow this morning. But for the most part, Canadians are being stoic, even in Toronto.
It is what it is, man.
I don't really feel like the snow plowers work fast enough to get things out of the way. So, good luck, everyone.
Wonderful day. I love it when it snows.
Don't you think it's going to be a mess here in Toronto?
It will be. Commuting, driving in town will be terrible.
But I'm not going to be driving. I'll be using public transit and just dress warm.
Snow has caused a long list of delays and cancellations at Toronto's Pearson International Airport. A snowstorm is dumping as much as 40 centimeters on southern Ontario, New Brunswick, and parts of Quebec. Most of Saskatchewan and Manitoba are under an extreme cold warning, with wind chill values dipping around minus 40. And Environment Canada is warning of bitterly cold wind around BC's Sea to Sky Highway, Whistler, and Pemberton. Canada is home to a quarter of the world's peatlands. They are a crucial carbon sink. They help regulate water, and they provide habitat for a wide range of plants and animals. But Canada doesn't even have a comprehensive map of where peatlands are in this country. As Anand Ram reports, new research says these critical parts of our planet are not well protected.
They are very wet, very squishy, and very unstable, but they are absolutely beautiful places.
Lorna Harris, ecosystem scientist at the Wildlife Conservation Society, describes what she calls a highly undervalued ecosystem, peatlands, not just for the biodiversity that flows in and out of these areas, but also for what they do to keep the climate stable.
They're one of our most important land-based carbon stores.
An estimated 600 billion tons of it worldwide, more than forests. But according to a new study by Harris and others in the peer-reviewed journal Conservation Letters, only 17% of peatlands are protected.
Yeah, it's a pity, yeah.
Taufik, who uses one name, is a professor who studies wetlands at IPB University in Indonesia. He says this number is a rough estimate, and that in his region, these ecosystems are under threat by agriculture.
If we, Indonesia, prepare land for farming, for agriculture, the economist way to do that, it's through burning. Because if we clear with machine, it's a cost of money.
He says draining and burning disrupts the peatland and releases that stored carbon. One way to strengthen protections, the authors say, is by empowering communities that steward these areas.
1/4 of global peatlands falling on Indigenous peoples' lands. That's what the paper has found.
Allowing an ecosystem that takes thousands of years to form, remain a carbon sink, and avoid becoming a source of more carbon emissions. Anand Ram, CBC News, Toronto.
That is the latest from World Report. This month, we are asking you to follow World Report wherever you get your podcasts. It helps us reach new listeners and helps you stay on top of the day's big stories. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another cold day. We've got an extreme cold morning across the south, pretty much the same as yesterday. We're looking at wind chills around minus 40. This hour on the program, Winnipeg's Craig Block was damaged last month when its Main Street neighbor, the Sutherland Hotel, burned in that big fire. The block is an important part of Manitoba's Black history. Stay tuned. We're going to talk more about that and about those who are trying to save it. In addition, this hour on the program, while most people fear sliding on ice when you're out there driving, we're going to meet a couple of drivers who live for it in a controlled, safe way. It's what makes winter fun, they say. It's the latest story in our Show Us Your Winter series. And then coming up at 10 to 8, we've been doing a series of healthcare stories this week as well to try and understand what is jamming up our emergency rooms. One of the things that we heard about is patients that might be waiting for long-term care that are actually in beds in ERs. We're going to look at how personal care homes are struggling as well with backlogs and what those ripple effects look like throughout the entire system. So we have a woman on this hour who works very closely with long-term care facilities all across the province, and she will share why she says the system, in her view, is in, quote, crisis mode. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells to find out about other news developing this morning. Hi there.
Hi there. Well, a survey of staff in Manitoba's Justice Department suggests a majority of Manitoba's Crown prosecutors are suffering from mental health issues. A source shared the 2023 survey results with CBC News. The survey found nearly 2/3 of criminal prosecutors who responded met the diagnostic criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, or depression. We'll hear more on that. And Canadians are getting serious about flag waving. Winnipeg's only flag store has been buzzing with online and in-person business for the last week. All of it set off by the tariff dispute with the U.S. president. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, we're going to hang on telling you about weather and traffic in a moment. Now, nothing is urgent, so we're going to take a second. That's because Heather was talking about the flags. You are calling us this morning and writing to us about whether or not you're going to be buying a flag, or maybe you already have, and why. So here's a call we got.
Hey, my name's Heather, and I think one of the things that as Canadians, and a word that's it's not used very often, is that we tend to be humble rather than flash and showy. So we always fly our Canadian flag, and I just wanted to say that we'll continue to fly our Canadian flag and humbly show our pride.
Kathleen Noel Black wrote into our Facebook page saying, I've been conscious to support local, buy local. I am local. I have a farm share. I have an egg share. As well, Wendy Lovett saying, Amanda LaRugetel writing in, I have small flags in the window. She's actually shared a picture of that. And I have one flying from my car window. Canada is not for sale. Juliet Cooper saying, buying Canadian is my way of showing support for the country. I fly the Canadian flag all the time. I've been doing it for years. I well remember February 15th, 1965. 1965, the maple leaf was a lovely sight. It was a lovely sight then, and it's very precious now, she writes. Vive le Canada. And finally, Jody Keel wrote in and shared her screensaver with us, and it's just a beautiful Canadian flag, just catching the light in a beautiful way with kind of over green grass. So obviously not taken in the depths of winter, but really lovely. Oh, I think we've actually got it up on our stream if you're watching the show on YouTube. Thanks, Kevin. So that's an actual picture of Jody Keel, her Canadian flag that she's got waving. And as she said, it's her screensaver, and she says, I love my country. So people are weighing in this morning. You can too. And that is on Facebook, or you can call us at 788-3205. Now, Corey Funk is here for weather and traffic, and then we're going to talk about flags.
Yeah, sounds good.
Because Corey's got a bit of an update on a flag story he has. But first, we better dip into the forecast here.
Right. So minus 27 right now here in Winnipeg, and we here in southern Manitoba, as well as parts of northwestern Manitoba, are all part of an extreme cold warning. Down south here, you can expect wind chills feeling close to minus 40 or so. And as you get up north there, Thompson and northwest there, wind chills feel more like minus 50. I'll have more in-depth forecast for you in about half an hour or so. But right now, minus 27. We are going to be warming up to about minus 20 here in Winnipeg today. So it's still going to stay pretty cold wind, 15 kilometers an hour or so today. But with that wind, that wind chill, though, does mean it's going to feel like more like minus 43 or so. Looking to the traffic right now, we are there's one major issue to keep an eye out for. That's north and southbound lanes of Arlington are closed between Notre Dame and McDermott due to a fire in the area. So if you're taking Arlington down that area between Notre Dame and McDermott, you do want to avoid that area altogether.
Okay.
If you see anything else, though, 204-788-3093.
Okay, we'll pass information once we get it about what's going on with the fire as well.
Yeah.
Also, one more traffic note here. Brandon School Division, a commuter note rather, has said they're not operating their buses outside the city of Brandon today, and that would be due to cold winter conditions. Now, we're giving you lots this morning in the top block to open the hour, but we have one more thing that we need to talk about, and that's because right before 7 o'clock, Corey was mentioning something about a flag, and then we got some listeners writing in, Paul Moist and Chris Templin, and you have to revisit what you said, and you've got some clarity.
Because we had a listener call in to say that they've put in a request for the Parliament Hill flags, but it turns out if you go to the website to request one, it does tell you that the wait exceeds 100 years, and that is true. It's not a typo. It's because there's only about 250 flags that they raise above Parliament Hill every year, and every year they give those away. But as you can imagine, 250 with 40 million Canadians, a lot of people might the supply does not quite meet demand.
You were musing before 7 o'clock. 100-year wait, is that a typo?
That's got to be a typo.
And then you realize
wrong.
These are the flags that you would see around Parliament on the building.
Yeah, actually flying.
So those will come down at some point, and you can apply to get them. But so you're going to put your kids' names on the list, or maybe your grandkids?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'll just anticipate my grandkids' names, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Time right now is 7:16. Well, we have a fire underway this morning, and our first story this hour is about the big fire that took down the Sutherland Hotel. But the story itself is looking at what's still standing on Main Street. A significant building in the province's Black history is at risk because the Craig Block was damaged when its Main Street neighbor caught on fire. So the two-story building is at 795 Main Street in the city of Winnipeg. It was built in 1894. It was home to North America's first ever Black union, and it became a hub for Black businesses over the years as well. But last month's devastating fire, as I alluded to at the Sutherland Hotel, has left the building's future in question. Nadia Thompson is with us first this morning via Zoom, first this hour, I should say. She's the program director and chairperson for Black History Manitoba. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us. So tell us a little bit more about the history of the Craig Block.
Well, basically what we were trying to significantly explain is that there are a lot of parts in Winnipeg that are not being archived and not being talked about when we talk about Black history, because we are thinking about just the big, really significant parts of our history for Canadian history. And if Winnipeg's celebrating 150 years, the Craig Block has been around for a very long time, and there's a portion of that history that should be kind of celebrated and also saved. So with this fire, we're looking at losing a piece of Black history here in Winnipeg.
Can you tell us more about what happened inside that building? I know I did sort of just a couple of the notes, but
yeah.
what more happened in the Craig Block?
It was like a gathering place for those who came, especially for the porters who were working on the trains. When they would come through Winnipeg, they would look for places to kind of congregate and to find other people within their community. And because a lot of different environments were not welcoming to Black people at the time, this was a place where they could go and they felt comfortable and safe. And they would have food, they would have fellowship, they would have events that takes place. They'd have music and jazz, great food cooked by some wonderful people. And it would felt more like a little piece of home while they were traveling through, or if they stayed here, this was home. And as being one of those initial places for that union to be created, there was a lot of talks about how to change the future of their union and those porters. And that made a very significant change in our history and how unions were run and how those employees were treated fairly. And that's how that started.
Yeah, for 6 decades, it actually had an association with, the Black community in our city, that building, the Craig Block. If people want to see pictures, by the way, of what Nadia and I are talking about, please go to our website and look back for an article that was written right around the time of the fire by my colleague, Darren Bernhardt. I know he spoke to Christian Cassidy, who does a lot of the, historical, research in our community. And so they have pictures up there, the Craig Block back in the day, and all of those brave men and women. And I say brave because I mean, imagine that these men voted to walk off their jobs during the Winnipeg General Strike of 1919, referring to the porters. And you're referring to different pool halls. It was the Unity Pool Hall. There's a lunch counter there, I understand. Went under the name Betty's and then Carl's for a while. So much history.
And they weren't very far from Pilgrim Baptist Church on Maple Street. And that is celebrating 100 years. So again, a part of the community is talking about religion and talking about having that safety. And with Pilgrim Baptist Church not too far, that was a great way for them to also have that sense of community and that sense of safetyness when they're going looking for a place to worship. So again, that's another, literally just down the street on Maple Street. So it was a time where people looked for that kind of security, and in a time that was a little tumultuous. So yeah.
What do you hope happens with it, Nadia? Like what's the state that it's in, and what are you hoping for it?
Our hope would be for it to be deemed a historical building. I know that's not an easy task. It does take some time to get that done, but it's worth it to save some of those buildings and preserve some of Winnipeg's history, because we need that for our young people, for our future. We can't really move forward if we're forgetting what the past was and where we came from, and those who sacrificed and gave up so much of their livelihood and their safety and all of those things, that we need to help them continue to be a significant part of Canadian history.
In terms of sharing that story and other stories, I know right now, obviously, it just happens to be Black History Month. I'm wondering what your organization, Black History Manitoba, really wants to put out there this month and have people thinking about in our community.
Well, we have a great theme this year. It's connecting communities, hearts, hands, and history. And the reason why we went with that theme is to kind of insinuate the fact that our communities are very similar more than we are different. And if we continue to learn about each other's communities and the connection there, it makes us stronger as a city and as a province and as Canada. We are going through all the same obstacles and challenges, and I think we can learn a lot from each other. And then also with the hands, it's doing the work. It doesn't take you very little time and effort to put in that time and make sure that you're giving a little bit to other communities. Learning doesn't take too much out of you. And then our hearts are in our communities, and we care about who is here, and we want to manifest that vision of change. And so I think if we work together and we strengthen each other, hold each other up, and share each other's equality, that we can be a better Manitoba.
How do you feel about how Black history is currently taught in schools?
We still have some work to do there for sure. I think it's way better than it was. I know for sure when I was in school, there wasn't very much talk about it. But as I go around to different schools, as Black History Manitoba is a part of the education system, and we want to help encourage students to voice their reasons for what they want to learn and to help change that curriculum. I think it's getting better, although it's not quite as good as we would like it to be. There's not that actual change. Those teachers and educators, we give them definite help, and we want them to know that we see them and they're doing a lot of work to make those changes. So we appreciate what they're doing, and we're here to help in any way that we can.
Anything to add about the month, or else about the Craig Block, which is what we started talking about before you go this morning, Nadia? Or maybe there's a website people should know about for different things.
Please look up the Manitoba Historical Society. Has lots of great stories. The Dolphin Rail Museum has some links that they are sharing about the general strike, and then bhmwinnipeg.com has some information as well there, and for all the activities that are going on during the year. I say year, not month.
Yeah, important.
Black history is Canadian history, so
right.
So you can get information there.
Yeah, I bet you're sick of let's just learn for 28 days and the rest of the year, right? We're a community all year round.
Exactly.
All right,
Thank
Nadia.
you,
Yeah, thank you for being on this morning. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
That's Nadia Thompson, Program Director and Chairperson for Black History Month Manitoba. And if you want to read more, as mentioned, about the Craig Block, and it's super interesting history around the unions and Maple as well, that church that she was talking about that is just behind, I think it's right by the Firefighters Museum in Winnipeg. So much to learn and explore in our city. So you can also check out, as I've been mentioning, Darren Bernhardt's deep piece looking at that history as well on our website. That's at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
A modestly priced hair salon offered a real dumb coupon.
Not $50 off, $50 on.
The city of Vienna posted negative online comments over spectacular photography. And a discount airline embraced their cheap aesthetic.
We call that flying smart class.
Advertising to haters on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on CBC Listen.
It is time for morning sports, and this morning I think Scott Regehr is back.
You are correct.
Aha!
You are correct. Good morning.
Sometimes I don't know till the Zoom feed comes up, and I'm like, is it Khalil? Is it Scott?
It is
welcome,
Scott.
Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Let's talk hockey. Canada drew first blood at this Four Nations face-off tournament last night, right?
Right, and it was a guy, Marcy, accustomed to wearing a leaf on his jersey that levied the decisive blow, Mitch Marner, scoring in overtime to beat Sweden. Marner, who is used to hearing boos from Montreal fans playing for NHL rivals Toronto, feted by the Montreal faithful for a change, and he wasn't alone. Canadian captain Sidney Crosby, he was cheered heartily while putting in a game-best performance, notching 3 assists. Coach John Cooper says we should not be surprised.
Sidney Crosby, I mean, the roof was coming off. That just shows you how much people care about him and respect him. It's no coincidence, his record when he's wearing a Canadian jersey. It's not fluke. He will go down as the greatest player to ever represent his country. If not, he's going to be on the Mount Rushmore for sure of people that have thrown the Canadian jersey on.
Yeah, he's got a great point, John Cooper. Playing for Canada, Crosby has not been on the losing end of a game since the 2010 Olympics. And if you're a hockey fan, you know things turned out okay at the end of those Vancouver games. Next up for Canada, Marcy, at the Four Nations event, a mouth-watering engagement against the Americans on Saturday night. In terms of Jets content last night, Winnipeg content overall, Josh Morrissey, no points for him. But since Shea Theodore was hurt last night, looks like Morrissey's going to have an even greater role to play for Canada going forward. And Mark Stone, who's from Winnipeg, plays for the Vegas Golden Knights. He had a goal last night, and he looked pretty good.
To basketball now, a Raptors contest rather that had the feel of a hockey game, I think.
Yeah, tempers flaring at the end of Toronto's bad defeat to the visiting Cavaliers, Marcy, with Cleveland well ahead in the game's dying seconds. Everyone expected them to just run out the clock, which is what you do. everyone but Cavaliers big man Tristan Thompson. He decided it was a good idea to rub some salt in Toronto's wounds, running in uncontested for a two-hand slam dunk. As fans booed him, Raptors players Scotty Barnes and Jamal Shed confronted Thompson with a fight very nearly breaking out. Here's Raptors coach Darko Rajakovic.
What Tristan did there was no class and disrespectful. I'm not going to stand for that for sure. And I'm really glad that our guys, our players, Scotty and everybody else, that they stood up for themselves. I love when my team stands up for themselves. That was no class act.
Yeah, the Brampton, Ontario-born Thompson Marcy, no stranger to drama. Just Google his name alongside Kardashian.
Okay, that's on the list then. To football before you go this morning, though, what are your takeaways from the second day of CFL free agency?
Well, pretty quiet on the Bomber front. The team did announce the signing of quarterback Shea Patterson, which was expected. Meantime, a former Bomber introduced to his new team, Kenny Lawler, spoke to the media after inking a reported $300,000 deal, much more than the Bombers were offering. This isn't the first time Lawler has left Winnipeg, of course, for more lucrative climbs. After winning back-to-back Grey Cups with the Blue and Gold, he signed with Edmonton, becoming the highest-paid receiver in the league. Lawler maintains, though, money was not his motivation this time.
It's a better move, right? When I was going to Edmonton, we all knew where I was going, right? It was just what I had to do financially. But now, my biggest thing is to win. And I think we can win here. And it's going to be a turnaround, you know? We're going to be going to the playoffs. We're going to bring that Grey Cup back. That's really what I believe.
Not so sure I believe Kenny Lawler, but there you go. The Bombers will face Hamilton for the first time in Winnipeg in late September.
All right, we'll see if it's our year for our team or not. Certainly the Grey Cup obviously is here in Winnipeg, so that'd be nice. But thank you.
You bet.
That's Scott Regehr with Morning Sports. Still ahead, ice racing, cars on ice racing. Yes, legally. Yes, safely. And some say it's how they celebrate winter. Our Show Us Your Winter contest continues. That's after your CBC Winnipeg News. This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's minus 27 degrees. That extreme cold is just not backing off. Much of Manitoba, including parts of the north, under that extreme cold warning this morning. In Winnipeg today, we've got sun and a high today of minus 20. A survey by staff at Manitoba's Justice Department suggests a majority of Manitoba's Crown prosecutors are suffering from mental health issues. A source shared the 2023 survey results with CBC News. Now, CBC did not see the confidential report, but the details have been confirmed by the union that co-commissioned the survey along with the Justice Department. The survey found nearly two-thirds of criminal prosecutors who responded met the diagnostic criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, or depression. Also, 16 of 150 prosecutors surveyed said they had contemplated suicide in the year prior to the survey. Ben Wickstrom speaks for the Manitoba Association of Crown Attorneys.
It's heartbreaking, obviously, to hear that someone has sort of hit that point where they think that might be sort of a solution to their what is often burnout or other mental health issues that they're facing.
The prosecutors' union meets with the Justice Minister next week. The maple leaf is in hot demand.
Are you here for a Canada flag?
Of course.
Winnipeg's only flag store has been buzzing with online and in-person business for the past week, all set off by the tariff dispute with the U.S. president. Anne Harwood stopped in at the flag shop on Osborne to get flags for her windows and planters.
I'm here to get my Canadian flags and support the prime ministers who encouraged us to do that. And just wanting to let our neighbours to the south know that they've really ticked us off.
Greg Barker was shopping for a flag for the first time ever.
Probably a lot of people. I haven't had a Canadian flag on my fence ever, and now's a good time to do it, so we can all show our feelings about the country.
Barker plans to attach a pole to his fence where he will fly his flag. He hopes neighbors will follow suit. Saturday is Flag Day in Canada. Now, Canada's premiers are calling their trip to Washington a success. It ended with a surprise visit to the White House where the premiers met with top Trump staffers. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is back in Ottawa today, about to meet with his cabinet. It has been a busy week for Canadian leaders going abroad to fight U.S. tariffs. Now, at the White House, Donald Trump is expected to sign an executive order today that could intensify a looming global trade war. The U.S. president will impose reciprocal tariffs on any country charging duty on U.S. imports. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. Landlords are pushing back on claims some are raising rents unfairly. A report released by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives says the province allows landlords to raise rents above the annual guideline increases too often. Avram Sharak at the Professional Property Owners Association says landlords must file proof of their renovations and other expenses to qualify to exceed the rent guideline. Sharak says landlords face stiff increases in everything from property taxes to appliance prices.
We're not increasing prices indiscriminately. We're not increasing prices without complete scrutiny by government, and we're not increasing prices before we suffer the loss.
The province says it is reviewing the Residential Tenancies Act. The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs has concerns about the Manitoba Adolescent Treatment Centre. The program helps youth struggling with mental health issues, but AMC says there is a lack of oversight. The concern was raised after a First Nations youth struggling with mental health issues was discharged from the program. Health Minister Uzoma Asaguera.
Accountability must be a part of the conversation. It's so important that Manitobans know that the services that they want to access are accountable to them. And so for us, again, these concerns that have been brought forward are being looked into.
Asaguera says the province is in contact with the family to work out the issue. And as most of Manitoba struggles with dangerous and seemingly never-ending extreme cold, in eastern Canada, it's snow. Lots of snow. Millions of Canadians getting a snowy hit, including those in Toronto.
Different from every day, I guess. And I've lived in Central Ontario where snow means everything's shut down, so this is easy. In the city, it's a pleasure, really.
Not that much salting, and the sidewalks are hard to walk through. Hopefully they get together.
Well, that's hearty. It's a pleasure, that one person says. Close to 20 centimeter expected in Toronto, coupled with strong winds. In other parts of eastern Canada, they are expecting as much as 40 centimeters of snow. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
I think I'd rather have what we've got if there's going to be a choice for winter, right? This extreme cold versus all the shoveling. You know,
I love
shoveling
shoveling, though.
Do you really?
Yeah.
You're one of those people.
It's a nice workout.
Oh, well, maybe that explains it. I like a nice sleep myself. Sorry.
You're hilarious.
I'm also not the shoveler in my house, so I have no business weighing in on this. All right. Speaking of that extreme cold, we will not get snow, so Heather won't get to shovel today. But you're all going to want to bundle up. Corey's in with our regional forecast.
Yeah, extreme cold warning in effect for all of southern Manitoba. We're talking about wind chills in the minus 40s feeling. And then once you're up north, northwestern Manitoba area, Brochet to Dooley Lake, those wind chills feels more like minus 50. So very cold frostbite in near minutes. So be careful out there. Right now, Winnipeg, we're sitting at minus 27. We're going to be warming up to minus 20 today. But with that wind chill, it's never going to feel that great. Going to still feel more like minus 43 today. And Brandon, you're sitting at minus 34 right now. You're heading for a high of minus 21. Dauphin, you're sitting at minus 29 right now. Your high is also going to be minus 21 today. Thompson, you are minus 38. You're heading for my high of minus 22. Churchill, you're minus 35, heading for a high of minus 24. And Gimli, you're minus 36, heading for a high of minus 28. 1-888-788. And if you're wondering, the cold spot right now in Manitoba is Kelsey Dam at -40, straight up. Yes.
Buses aren't running in Brandon School Division in the rural areas, and that is because of extreme cold, by the way.
And for other traffic, the only really issue I've heard of so far is here in Winnipeg. North and southbound lanes of Arlington are currently closed between Notre Dame and McDermott due to a fire in the area. So you want to avoid that area if you can. If you have any other updates for me on your commute, whether it's good or bad, if you want to say, hey, I'm out there doing my thing, I'm skiing to work or something in this cold weather, let me know. 204-788-3093.
Well, listen to this action. This is ice racing. A lot of drivers might fear a little slide on ice, but as you can hear, people driving these vehicles are not fearing it. They're speeding across the ice. What we're listening to are automotive enthusiasts. You might be watching them if you're watching our Facebook stream, by the way, our YouTube stream, rather. And they live for the speed and the thrills on an icy lake. In fact, ice racing, they say, helps them get through winter. Tim Gordienko is one of those people. He's a passionate ice racer of 40-plus years and a member of the Winnipeg Sports Car Club. He is part of our series here this morning, as part of our series. We asked you to show us your winter and tell us what you get you through the cold months, and ice racing is the answer for Tim. Hi there.
Good morning, Marcy.
So this is so awesome to watch. You guys are serious, going around this ice track. And where do you actually do this?
Well, we've got a tour that runs around southern Manitoba. So we started out in Beausejour on the ice oval, and then we moved to Winnipeg for a couple events in St. Boniface there at the water ski pond. This weekend we're going to be up at Winnipeg Beach at their Winnipeg Festival, and then we finish the season in Gimli at their ice festival.
So you're actually out on a track that's cut onto the lake in some cases, onto the actual surface?
Yeah. We put a plow out on the ice and we make a road course type of track. It's about 1 kilometer long.
And then what's the race itself? Is it like one lap or does it last longer? How many laps?
Oh, it's usually timed. We go for about 10 minutes per class. We have 3 different classes that are racing.
Okay. And it's drifting too. It's like getting the car to like pull out and the snow goes flying. I'm watching the video of it as we're talking.
Yeah.
What got you into this in the first place? You've been doing it. Is that right? 40 years?
40 plus years. Yeah. I just like the being part of the sports car club and just enjoy driving in winter on ice. So I like the challenge. It's an adrenaline rush for sure.
Now, how safe is it? People might be thinking to themselves, first of all, could the car fall through the ice? Obviously, you need cold weather like this to make it safe. But how do you respond to the safety concerns around this?
Well, it's quite organized. It's part of the club, and we have a whole group of volunteers that keeps the racing safe and keeps it running on time.
What's your favorite memory of being behind the wheel? Describe it, Tim. Like, I don't know if it was like a perfect drift or a race you thought you wouldn't win, or maybe you had a win under your cap.
Oh, yeah, that goes back several years, but I'm sure it was like my first win probably that I actually achieved something because it is very difficult. The car is part of it, but it really comes down to driver skill that gets you through to the front.
What kind of vehicles are used for this? And I see in the video they're all, obviously it's part of a racing circuit, so they're all marked up and, this is a serious competition.
Yeah, well, smaller 4-cylinder cars are best. Lighter cars get you around the corners faster, so that's typically what we're running.
And do you have sponsors and stuff?
Cast-off cars that aren't on the street anymore.
Got it. Sorry, I'm excited, so I'm asking too many questions. But
that's fine.
Do you have sponsors as well, or they're like how serious does this get?
We have a couple of series sponsors that cover the whole series, and then each individual car. If we bring some sponsors in to cover expenses for entry fees and such.
How popular is it? How many people involved in your club?
There's probably 20 to 30 cars actually competing, and then there's like I say, the whole group of volunteers in the club that come out and help keep things running.
If people can imagine this, I mean, on the surface of the lake, you're going to have a wide track, and it looks like maybe about 3 cars could get across the track. And then it's clearly that you've got boundaries, but if you go off, then you're into the actual just snowy conditions on the ice. Some of the tracks seem to have sort of trees that are lining to delineate where the track is. Is there a race? Pardon me, is there a way to get involved in ice racing? Like you said, obviously you need to have some serious skill as a driver. So what should people understand if they're interested in learning more?
Well, like we have 3 classes of racing, and the ice drifting is easiest to get into. A number of people just bring out their street cars, they drive them there, and they participate in, it's not competition, but they get to drive the track and experience what it's like to drift around corners and stuff. It's a great way to get started.
And what is it like? Can you describe this to us? Like when you're behind the wheel and you're going around?
It's a skill that you have to develop because you have to set up for a corner before you actually get to the corner. So if I'm taking a passenger around with me, they're quite surprised at how much work it is in the car. Even though you're sliding and it looks like you're out of control, you're actually drifting around the corner quite in control.
How fast are you going?
Well, I drive in the street safe class, so we get up to about 80 kilometers an hour max. But the studded cars, which are the fully prepared race cars, they get up to about 120, 130.
Wow. And what are you driving?
I've got an old Saturn Ion, 2003.
Have you ever rolled? Have you ever crashed?
I did years ago in my old Datsun that I was racing.
Got it. It rolled or crashed? What happened?
I caught a snowbank and flipped me over. Rolled right back onto the wheels.
Wow. You walk away from that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, obviously you walked away from it, but I meant in the moment you didn't get seriously injured, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
In fact, I put the car back together and finished racing at the end of the day.
Oh, racers. Can you see? I mean, the snow must be whipping up, too. It must be quite an experience to be out there.
Yeah, that's one of the unnerving parts, too, is especially in the studded class because they kick up a lot of ice dust. So we have a amber light at the back of the car facing backwards, so you can see the car in front of you. Sometimes that's all you can see.
Man, well, this will get you through winter if it's your jam. There's a race this weekend, I heard. What's going on?
Winnipeg Beach, part of their festival. So we'll be out there for both days. Saturday is like a test and tune. We bring out the new drivers. They can have a lot of track time. And then Sunday we start racing at noon.
Good luck. Have a good time, Tim.
Thank you very much, and thanks for getting in touch with us. Like I say, this is club racing has been going on since the late 50s. So it's a little-known sport in Winnipeg and Manitoba, but we're a hardy group, and we really enjoy winter.
Well, I love that. That's exactly what this contest is all about. So thank you for being on and telling us about it. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Tim Gordienko on with us, member of Winnipeg Sports Car Club, and has been ice racing, as we said, for more than 40 years. So this weekend, you can head to Winnipeg Beach and check it all out. There's also still time to show us your winter. This is part of a contest we're running. You can send us the I Love Winter stories, pretty much. Tell us how you survive winter. Is it something you do outside? Is it something you do inside? However you get through winter, you'll be entered to win a CBC Winter Prize Pack, and we actually have it in studio this morning. So it is a CBC toque, CBC socks. This is all with our new logo. It's pretty swish. I like it. And then the CBC T-shirt as well. So it's all black stuff in the background, and then the logo's all with nice, lovely colors. And it says CBC Manitoba on it as well, so it identifies the province. So you have a chance to win if you email us at win@cbc.ca, a picture or a short video with a brief description of how you get through winter. Show us how you love winter. And tune in tomorrow. We'll have another story for you. We're going to hear how some Manitobans are out in the snow, quote unquote, golfing, but they do it without grass or clubs.
Breaking news happens anywhere, anytime.
Police have warned the protesters repeatedly, get back.
CBC News brings the story to you as it happens.
Hundreds of wildfires are burning.
Be the first to know what's going on and what that means for you and for Canadians.
This situation has changed very quickly.
Helping make sense of the world when it matters most. Stay in the know. CBC News.
So because of the cold conditions, Brandon School Division is not running rural buses. They will run buses within the city of Brandon. So this is school division buses, obviously school buses, not running in the rural part of the Brandon. Want to mention also that we do have that extreme cold warning. It extends across southern Manitoba. Wind chills will be around -40, and then to the north, wind chills will feel like -40 to -45. Coming up on the program after 8 o'clock on the show, this is Islam Awareness Week, and Muslim students at the University of Manitoba are getting involved. They're welcoming anyone who'd like to join them, and 2 students are going to join us in studio after 8. We're going to hear from them. They've already been setting up tables. They have themes for every day. They're going to talk about what conversations are coming up on campus at U of M. They're also going to tell us about a serious need that they have. At points for their community space and prayer, they have 900 students showing up. The thing is, their space only holds 250, so stay tuned. We're going to hear more about that as we touch base with the Muslim Students Association. A couple of the members going to join us here on the show after 8. Right now, though, let's return to our series of stories about Manitoba's healthcare system this week. It all started Monday with a feature interview with a nurse from Health Sciences Centre ER, whose name we're withholding to safeguard her job. But she shared a whole bunch of things from her frontline point of view in the hospital that she questioned and asked how we can improve the system. So we've been looking at pieces of what she said all week. We also, out of that interview, then talked to Dr. Sean Young. Now, Dr. Sean Young is the Chief Operating Officer for HSC. He says the emergency room is not the only care facility struggling to keep up with demand. Personal care homes are struggling as well. And he says that has a ripple effect through the entire healthcare system. Here's a clip from him. He says it's only getting worse.
We're all struggling with the same challenges with a lot of patients in hospitals that we can't get them into their next phase of treatment, whether it's rehab or long-term care or home care. So all our hospitals are quite full of patients that don't actually need a hospital anymore. We call them ALCs, alternate level of care, and that number is not getting better, and that's a concern. So we do definitely need those services beyond the hospital to be beefed up. I think our biggest challenge right now that the government can help us with is helping us with the home care, the long-term care. What is causing us the access block and the alternate level of care numbers to be so high? And there's 25% of the patients at a health science center that have been there for over a month, many over 2 months, that need those facilities to be opened.
My next guest is Sue Wojcik. She's the Executive Director of the Long-Term and Continuing Care Association of Manitoba. That's a nonprofit that advocates for personal care homes all across the province and the thousands of people who rely on them. Thanks for being with us via Zoom this morning, Sue. Appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
So what is your reaction to, to hearing Dr. Young there talk about, questioning where the backlogs are and looking at this?
Unfortunately, Marcy, this is not new. This has been an issue. I mean, prior to this position, I worked in government for over 30 years. This has been a long-standing issue with folks transitioning to the next level of care from hospital. I think the misnomer is that, our personal care homes are full. The other piece, when you're talking about folks, it was specifically with Dr. Young talking about folks in HSC, a number of those folks are not only waiting for a regular personal care home bed, but a specialty bed, whether that be a special needs unit, special needs behavior unit, or chronic care. So it's not a black and white issue. There's a lot of complexity involved. Having said that, the complexity of care for the folks transitioning to long-term care is only increasing as well.
So we know this. We knew this would happen. I mean, we've done story after story here at CBC about the boomer generation going to be aging into the system as well. And what do we do? And not enough beds. So what is the current state of Manitoba's long-term care system? Like, where are we at? There are some builds in the works, but I understand that your term for this is like we are in crisis mode right now.
Well, we really are. We're very grateful, and there have been 2 announcements from the current government for one new build in Lac Tabani for 95 beds, and they're expanding Park Manor to another 90 beds. But we are short, and I guess the frustration is, as you said, we've known the tsunami's coming, and we're just not prepared. The new beds are one part of the situation, but the other part is we have 124 personal care homes in Manitoba, and we're talking old infrastructure. So we need to be looking at a funding model that appropriately funds, but looking also at capital investment to ensure we are modernizing the aging infrastructure. Because coupled with all of this as well is best practice. We know that best practice and evidence-based is telling us small house models is how we should be caring for older adults in long-term care. We should be looking at person-directed living, all those pieces. But our current PCH stock, some of them have 50-bed units. We're talking about the necessity of 10-bed units. So where is that money coming from to modernize our existing infrastructure? Because we are on a precipice of a crisis. And you said, part of us we're really frustrated because we've known the tsunami is coming, correct?
Well, we all have known the tsunami is coming. And then obviously during COVID across the whole country, I would argue that we started really leaning into what's going on in care homes and the need for what kind of care we need. The space issue is interesting to me because I don't think people would have realized maybe that necessarily that there's people that are in hospitals and even in the ER department that are waiting. I know our I-team did an investigation at one point talking about paying the hospital for the stay, like it's a care home, but you're not in a care home. So we have lots of issues. Where do you see the solutions lying? I mean, not just to stay with the problems here, but is this just about funding? Like, where do you see the solutions?
I think part of it's funding. I mean, a big part of it is funding for the current personal care homes, because I mean, they're funded for 18% for benefits for staff when it costs 22%. We're talking about in a non-index funding formula, so we're talking about the inflation, all those pieces. But a part of that is we want to work with government to be part of the solution. I mean, there's some immediate fixes that could happen, even looking at other models of care like supportive housing. Like right now, we have a social model of care for supportive housing, which is staffed by tenant companions. We've had on the table, for the last 4 years, asking to get funding to upgrade that to healthcare aides. By just doing that takes some pressure off the personal care home beds because more people can go into that model of care. So there are some immediate solutions that are available. So we want to work with government, use the expertise we have, because you're right, we can't just sit here and perseverate just on the problems. We have to be starting looking at solutions and innovations, like what can we do? And not all of it's complicated. It really isn't. There's some easy fixes. I'm
going to just ask you to clarify here, because I think if an average listener's, I need clarity. So sure. maybe listeners do as well. When you say that adding healthcare aides into supportive housing could be part of the solution, can you clarify supportive housing? Because some people might be thinking, does that mean assisted living or seniors block? Like, can you clarify what you mean?
For sure, no, supportive housing. There's 10 in Winnipeg, but we have multiple sites throughout the province. But there's small house models. There's 12 tenants to a unit. So right now they're staffed by tenant companions, but do not have healthcare training. So they're there to provide meals, bubble packed medications, recreational programming, but not actually any healthcare. That comes from the home care system. So if we just change that model to a healthcare aid, we could increase the complexity of folks that could transition into that type of housing.
How long is the wait list for a personal care home bed in Winnipeg right now?
It depends. Right now, they're averaging nine beds become available a day, and those 9 beds are taken. So it really depends on, like I said earlier, if you're waiting for a specialty bed or a regular personal care home bed. And the wait's different if you're waiting from community or from hospital. So again, it varies.
Is it longer if you're waiting in hospital or in community?
It depends what you're waiting for, because in a community, you can wait for your preferred choice. In hospital, once like what Dr. Young was mentioning, once you've been determined by acute care as ALC, ready to transition to another level of care, your panel for personal care home. But the expectation is then that you accept the first available bed in the long-term care setting.
How big of a problem is this in rural Manitoba right now?
It's a problem across the province, because in rural Manitoba, I mean, they have so many folks that are waiting in their hospitals for personal care home beds. They have less beds And there's also, for specialty beds, they place a provincial demand on the Winnipeg beds, because the outside of Winnipeg, in the small towns, they don't have access to special needs units, special needs behavior units, chronic care. So those folks that have especially, they're waiting for beds in Winnipeg. So this is a provincial issue, absolutely. And the aging infrastructure is right across the province. Sorry, Marcy.
No, please go on.
The other piece of that is, talk about funding. We're looking for a consistent funding model for personal care homes across the province as well.
I was going to ask Sue if you have anything to add before you go this morning that you feel is important to say.
Well, the piece is it's funding. I said the new build announcements are welcomed. We appreciate that, absolutely. But what do we do to modernize our infrastructure? Because, like I said, we're in a crisis. We need to work with government to address this as soon as possible.
And will modernizing infrastructure add space? Because if we're talking about moving people in, people do equate this to beds, right?
Well, yeah, it'll improve care for sure. It could also improve the number of specialty beds, which will positively impact flow from acute care.
Thank you very much for being with us. Really appreciate your perspective.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Stay warm.
Yeah, we'll try. Sue Wojcik, the Executive Director of the Long-Term and Continuing Care Association of Manitoba. 2 minutes now to 8. Heather Wells in with headlines.
Good morning. The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs has concerns about the Manitoba Adolescent Treatment Centre. The program helps youth struggling with mental health issues. But AMC raised concerns after a First Nations youth who was struggling with mental health issues was discharged from the program. Canadians are getting serious about flag waving. Winnipeg's only flag store has been buzzing with online and in-person business for the past week, all set off by that tariff dispute with the U.S. president. We'll take you to the flag shop in our next local news at 8:30.
Still ahead, Muslim students at the U of M are spending this week celebrating, they say, the beauty of Islam and educating others, as well as just having those conversations. They also need space. They're overflowing at their community space there, so we're going to hear all about it. And Corey's going to give a traffic tip.
Arlington North and South between McDermott and Notre Dame closed. So is Parr for a fire between Jarvis and Stell Avenue.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
The Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter Nico Case has written her first memoir, The Harder I Fight, The More I Love You. She'll tell you a little bit about how her memoir reflects on her roots, her move to Canada, and how she found a family in the music scene in the Pacific Northwest. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
For years, Canada has been falling behind on productivity and innovation, and business leaders say now, in the face of tariffs, is the time to tackle the issue head on. How to insulate Canada's economy from threats, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Marcia Young. Ukraine's president is refusing to accept any peace agreements that do not include Kyiv. Volodymyr Zelensky is responding to reports that the U.S. and Russia are going to start negotiations between themselves. Yesterday, U.S. President Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin talked at length about the conflict. Zelensky's concerns are being shared by NATO defense ministers. Crystal Gomansing has more.
It's not Americans who protected Ukraine 3 years ago when Russia started full-scale invasion. It was not American Marines who stopped Russians near Kyiv. It were the Ukrainians.
Ukrainian MP Alexei Goncharenko says Ukraine will not be sidelined in talks about its future and ending the war. That conviction was echoed today by NATO defense ministers meeting in Brussels, including Canada's Bill Blair.
It is essential from our perspective that Ukraine must be part of that negotiation, and that we're going to continue to support them to enable them to be in the strongest possible position to achieve that just and sustainable peace.
Goncharenko also wants sustainable peace, but says giving up Ukrainian territory is not acceptable.
Part of these territories can be occupied by Russians for some time, but it doesn't mean that we will sometimes in future accept it. No, it will never happen, never ever.
NATO is also feeling the pressure from the U.S. for alliance members to increase defense spending to 5% of GDP. Many nations, including Canada, are not hitting the current requirement of 2%. Mark Ruda is NATO's Secretary General.
We have to spend more, not only because the US expects that, because they expect Europe to take its and pay its fair share.
An investment, he says, is needed in light of increasing global threats. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
Police in Munich say at least 28 people have been injured by a vehicle driving into a crowd. It happened this morning at a trade union rally. The Premier of Bavaria says police suspect this was an intentional act. The driver of the car was a 24-year-old Afghan asylum seeker. The suspect was previously known to police in relation to drug and theft incidents. That person is now in custody. Trade and tariffs are expected to be high on the agenda when Narendra Modi and Donald Trump meet today. The Indian Prime Minister is in Washington. Like so many leaders, he is trying to avoid Trump's punishing tariffs. But there's another issue they will likely discuss. If the U.S. president's deportation of Indian nationals. CBC South Asia correspondent Salima Shivji has more.
As his plane landed at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi stepped down with a wave, greeted by members of the Indian diaspora. Modi is in Washington today for high-level talks. He'll be hoping to avoid any outrageous demands from U.S. President Donald Trump. A dear friend, Modi calls Trump, but one fixated on trade.
So when India, which is a very big abuser...
It's a sticking point, with the U.S. president branding India the tariff king. Trump might also pressure New Delhi to buy more American oil. But also simmering is the issue of illegal immigration. Protests in India flared up last week after an American military plane deported 104 Indians, handcuffed and shackled for the entire journey. Sworn Singh's son Akashdeep was on that plane. How could they treat him like that, he says. Prime Minister Modi needs to tell Trump to stop sending our children back and crushing their dreams. But that's unlikely to happen on such a tricky issue. India is keen to show the Trump administration they're open to taking back illegal migrants. Singh points to the 2 acres of land that are no longer his, sold to pay for his son's trip to the U.S. The family is heavily in debt now. I'm on antidepressants, his wife Daljit Kaur says. I can't see how we will ever repay our loans. The fear in this part of India is that the deportations will ramp up. A second U.S. military plane full of deportees is expected to land in India as early as this weekend. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Amritsar.
Protesters in Tel Aviv are demanding the release of Israeli hostages still being held by Hamas. They held up huge photos of the captives as they blocked a major highway. Some say they are worried the U.S. president's recent ultimatum will destroy their chances of seeing their loved ones again. Donald Trump has said all Israeli hostages must be released by noon on Saturday. This morning, Hamas says it will release 3 hostages on Saturday, as it agreed to in the current ceasefire agreement. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is back in Ottawa and about to meet with his cabinet. It has been a busy week for Canadians and the leaders going abroad to fight U.S. tariffs. For more, let's go to Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Janice, is it time to regroup?
Marcia, the Prime Minister's obviously spent the last few days taking the temperature in Europe, talking to allies, also staring down Donald Trump's threats. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly is off to Paris now, meeting with more allies, including at the Munich Security Conference this weekend and onwards with G20 counterparts in South Africa. But perhaps the most important input into today's cabinet meeting is what Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc brings back from his face-to-face with the incoming Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick yesterday, as well as Trump's economic advisor Kevin Hassett. LeBlanc said Canada's work on the fentanyl crisis is in what he called a positive lane, that this meeting gave them a sense of what metrics the Trump administration will use to review Canada's actions on the border. He said they've got a better sense now of what lies beyond the tariff threats in early March, too.
I'm also optimistic that we have a better understanding of the process that Mr. Lutnick is going through in terms of the April 1st sort of global tariff decisions.
A lot of consulting, but no one's figured out any solutions yet.
So what do the premiers have to show for themselves after they went all the way down to Washington?
Well, the meeting that got the most attention when they cleared their schedules to sit down with two of Trump's more junior officials at the White House may be remembered more for increasing tensions, not decreasing them, with the White House Deputy Chief of Staff chiding the premiers afterwards on social media that there was no agreement, that Canada won't be the 51st state, and that they need to take the president at face value. The premiers did photo ops and scrums for the reporters back home, but otherwise it's not clear yet what the $85,000 that the Council of the Federation spent on hiring a Trump-connected lobbyist to open doors for them actually delivered.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. Across the country, Canadians are battling the elements. A city bus in Regina trying to get over a mound of snow. The prairies are facing blistering cold temperatures, and parts of Ontario, Quebec, and New Brunswick are dealing with up to 40 centimeters of snow. On the East Coast, there's snow and freezing rain. Airports are also being affected. Airlines are warning customers to check their flight status and be prepared for possible delays. A community in Nunavut has lost a vital building. Fire destroyed Iglulik's arena early yesterday morning. The smoke forced nearby schools and health center to shut down. As Emma Tratton reports, this arena was much more than a skating rink.
Oof, it's so sad.
Guillaume Saladin woke up Wednesday morning to news the performing arts space he helped create for kids in Iglulik, Nunavut was burning.
You know, we have a wall with all the flags, all the countries we traveled to over the years. And I was picturing this wall of flags burning, and I was just crying.
Saladin co-founded Art Cirque, a local circus group in 1998 that shared a space in the building, which people in the community of 2000 call the Black Box. It was a space for people to gather, play music, and connect with each other. It's also where Iglulik's world-renowned circus group practices. Chief Administrative Officer George Kaunak says the building is a total loss.
We will not be able to recover. The whole building is going to have to come down.
The building also housed the community's hockey rink, where a major tournament was planned to take place in April, and where kids and families could skate. Saladin says the loss is unthinkable. No one was seriously injured, and the fire marshal is investigating the cause. Despite the devastation, Saladin says he remains hopeful.
Art Cirque is not a place, it's the people. That's the good news. And once all this fire is gone, we'll have time. We have to take time to rebuild and make it even better than it was before.
Emma Tranter, CBC News, Yellowknife.
That is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Bitterly cold in Manitoba this morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us here on Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. 8:10 a.m. right now. Thursday morning, and Brandon School Division, because of this cold, has canceled their rural buses for today. So just a small note there. This half hour on Information Radio, Muslim students at the University of Manitoba need more space to come together. They have 900 students showing up at a space that holds 250. Stay tuned, we're going to hear more about that. In addition, they're spending the week celebrating the beauty of Islam. It is Islam Awareness Week. So at U of M, they have a whole bunch of different really interesting initiatives. They're welcoming anyone who wants to join them in conversation, and we have a feature interview this half hour all about some of those initiatives. Stay with us. Heather Wells is here first, though, with headlines and other stories. Hello.
Hello. Well, a survey of staff in Manitoba's Justice Department suggests a majority of Manitoba's Crown prosecutors are suffering from mental health issues. A source shared a 2023 survey results with CBC News. The survey finding nearly two-thirds of criminal prosecutors who responded met the diagnostic criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, or depression. Landlords are pushing back on claims some are raising rents unfairly. A report released by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives says the province allows landlords to raise rents above the annual guideline increases too often. Avram Sharak at the Professional Property Owners Association says landlords have to file proof of their renovations and other expenses in order to qualify to exceed the rent guideline. I'll be back with more Manitoba News at 8:30.
Heather was talking about people buying flags. There's a story in the news this morning, and we asked you if it's something that you're doing, why or why not. Vicky Rempel says, I'm buying Canadian. I'm boycotting American. I have a proud Canadian flag flying on my front deck. I'm encouraging my friends and loved ones to do the same. And Lisa Teal said, laugh out loud. I spent last night thinking about where I can cement in a pole with two flags, the Canadian and the Australian flag, as my delightful Aussie neighbors should also be acknowledged. We live happily side by side at the lake. It is 8:13 this morning. Let's get into what is happening with the weather and also with the traffic situation. Corey's covering both.
Yeah, let's start with the weather. Minus 27 right now in Winnipeg, and that comes as an extreme cold warning grips much of southern Manitoba. Minus 40 right now is what it feels like with the wind chill across southern Manitoba. And in the northwestern Manitoba, also even colder, extreme cold warning for you as well. Wind chills feel more like minus 50. It is going to warm up to minus 20 today, but that wind chill will make it feel much, much colder here in Winnipeg. As for your commute right now, out there's a couple things to keep an eye out for. There's a fire that has north and southbound lanes of Arlington blocked between Notre Dame and McDermott. That is due to a fire. And WFPS has also closed Parr Street between Jarvis Avenue and Stella Avenue, as well Dufferin between Arlington and Mackenzie, also closed to traffic. So do look out in there. That's the only major issue I've heard of this morning. But if you do see anything else going on out there, do give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Well, up next on CBC, Muslim students at the University of Manitoba are gathering together for a very special and spiritual reason this week. They're celebrating Islam Awareness Week. That's an annual event that's held on campuses and in communities all across Canada. The goal is to, and I'm quoting here, explore the beauty of Islam. But this year, Aisha Sultan says that the week is especially poignant. She says it's crucial to confront what she sees as a rise in Islamophobia. Aisha Sultan is president of the University of Manitoba's Muslim Students Association and in studio with us. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcia.
And Barira Kamran is with us as well, the association's manager of student life. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you as well.
So, Aisha, let me start with you because I mentioned, something that you were thinking about. But I actually want to start with the first thing I said, exploring the beauty of Islam, that being Islam, the sort of thinking around the week. Mm-hmm. What does that mean to you when I say that, exploring the beauty of Islam?
Yeah. So this is something what our actually media manager posted as well on our Instagram and social media, talking about the Islam Awareness Week and indicating the beauty of Islam. And for us, or even for me, when we say beauty of Islam, it has so many things. It is a knowledgeable religion, a religion filled with discipline, lifestyle, equality, equity, and it has so much beauty in it, especially from talking to, let's say, elders or talking to the youngest person we are being taught about those things and how to respect each other. So it's a religion of peace and loving each other for the sake of Allah, our God. And that is one of the beauty. And most importantly, for me personally, it's how everyone is equal in Islam. So when we go and pray, everyone who is even the richest person on earth or even someone who has a really normal lifestyle, they would come in and stand together in the same line and they would pray and they would bound themselves. And we know the purpose when we all come together to pray as well. It's purpose for our God. So when we come together and stand and forget about the worldly things we have and we're just so humbled and knowing the purpose of our life and knowing that beauty that holds within, it's so beautiful for us.
You say that message, though, is being lost right now somewhat in a wider way, that, the education and awareness about Islam to you is crucial as your language. Mm-hmm. Tell me more about that. What concerns you right now?
Currently, the concern that we are facing in the day and time that we are in nowadays, Islam is, again, a beautiful religion. It has so much beauty towards it and so much to learn from it. But unfortunately, the light that it's being under right now, it's causing it for people to get scared away or maybe have some fear, which is causing the Islamophobia. And the definition of Islamophobia is hatred or fear towards a Muslim or Islam. So which means there's a lot of stereotypical narratives or negative narratives that come through or microaggression that can come through. So a person like me who is a visible Muslim, it's a person like Barira who's a visible Muslim who's wearing a hijab, or even men, like they have really common name Muslims like Muhammad, my brothers Hamza and Talha, they have such a common Muslim name. So people who are easily identified, which is Muslims, they can easily get hatred or maybe feared of, which is not something that we are representing, which is not something we're learning as well.
Barira, you've been nodding the whole time as well. Tell me a little bit about your feelings around this, the misconceptions and that you really would love to dispel.
Yeah, no, what Aisha mentioned, I totally second all of that. The fear, the misconceptions are, like for me personally, as some people think, as a Muslim woman who loves to cover and wear the hijab, I wear a dress all the time, which is called an abaya. So people think, oh, maybe I'm oppressed, or, sometimes I also feel like maybe I'm seen at less than, like in my classes, just because I'm fully covered. They will think, oh, maybe I come from a background where I'm oppressed to dress like that. I may not have a voice of my own, may not have opinions of my own.
And how do you know that? Do people say things to you?
Yeah, it can be seen in people's, the way, how much, space they give you to share your thoughts, how much they are, responding to you if you say something, how much they're taking into account what you are saying, or maybe they're just moving on to the next person, and, giving more space to their thoughts and their feelings rather than mine. So this is observed a lot of times in many different settings.
Which is partially why of course, we're talking about this week and the importance of all of what you're going to be sharing to educate people. You're organizing different themes every day, I understand, to focus on. Tell me a bit about the themes.
Yeah, so this is for our Islam Awareness Week, which is to spread awareness about Islam. This week was ongoing from February 10th to 14th. And we have different themes. So Monday was our 5 pillars of Islam. We started off just talking about the base or foundation of what Muslims believe in and 5 pillars. And then Tuesday was our Modesty in Islam Day, where we talked about modesty for men and women. And I named it not just modesty for women, because I really wanted to emphasize how Islam focuses on modesty for men and women, which is also another misconception. People think, oh, only women cover up, but our religion also have guidelines for how men should present themselves or cover up, or what modesty means for them. I really wanted to, bring focus to that. And then Wednesday is expected to be the Rewords Day. So
Revert Day, what is that?
Yeah, revert in Islam, we refer to people who were not Muslim previously or were not born as Muslim, but they converted to their religion. We refer to them as reverts. And the main reason for organizing this is at our university, there's a lot of people from diverse backgrounds who may not look like me, or, maybe if somebody thinks of a Muslim, maybe there's a traditional image that comes to their mind of a Muslim. Maybe they don't look like a certain way, and they come from very diverse backgrounds, and I really wanted those people to be at the MSA table. We're having these tables throughout the campus, every single day.
You're set up on campus,
yeah. So I wanted people to see those people from diverse backgrounds, and actually maybe if somebody looks like them on the table, but they are wearing a hijab, they would be more open to reach out to those people and see that, Muslims come from all diverse backgrounds. And that's also talks about the beauty of Islam that Aisha was talking about.
And then round out the week, because we're almost finished. Thursday, Friday. We're almost finished with the week, that is.
Yeah.
What are your themes for Thursday, Friday?
Thursday, wanted to talk about lifestyle as a Muslim. And that is a very broad topic. And that day we are also encouraging everybody to fast. It's a sunnah, or we call it a practice of the Prophet Muhammad that Muslims believe in as the last messenger. So it's a practice of him to fast on Mondays and Thursdays. And fasting is already proved to have so many benefits. People do it, even non-Muslims do it for non-religious purposes. And this is also just to help people prepare for Ramadan that's coming up, which will be 30 days of fasting. So we thought, let's just put a fasting day there, encourage everybody to fast, just to, get in the feel of fasting.
What has it felt like at the booth so far as you've been interacting with other students? Either what are they most curious about, or what's it felt like for you to, in a positive way, be able to share, with people, Aisha?
Yeah. So we had one of our booths in Fletcher, which was our first day, and we had a lot of students who were genuinely curious about the religion, which was really good. And either they were studying religion or they were majoring in something that was closely related to it. So they came in with a lot of curiosity, a lot of intention to learn about the religion. And when we saw that positive encouragement or their attitude towards us and learning about this religion was a really good feeling to me to see how our campus is evolving and they're actually more open to have this discussion and talk about it more effectively.
Amazing. Barrera, what's it like for you when you're in class and you feel like you were saying like less than? How hopeful are you that this whole week might change that for you?
Oh, I'm very hopeful that this week has a positive impact, because a lot of people who come at the table, sometimes they're a little bit hesitant, and we invite them and we tell them, we preface our conversations by saying, we're not here to convert you. We don't want you to be converted into Islam. We just want to share what we are, or what we think. And then we start the conversation by asking people, hey, do you know anything about Islam? Or do you want to learn anything about Islam? And in the beginning, people are a little bit hesitant, but once you start the conversation and make sure and, reassure them that we're not converting you, we're not challenging your ideas, we're not trying to target you or your beliefs, we're just trying to share what we believe in. Then they open up and get comfortable. And on the table, we have had people talking to one of our volunteers for 3 hours. One person brought up his Bible, and he was sharing what he knows about his religion, and we were sharing what we know and the commonalities. And so the conversations are just beautiful and very eye-opening.
Now, there is something that we have to talk about just in the last minute here before you two go, because you have a need. So the Muslim Students Association, Aisha, is preparing for Ramadan, as mentioned, to support. What do you need to support the Muslim community on campus? Because you and I touched on this a bit when we met at U of M during Communities in Focus. You need space, right?
Yes. So currently, yes, space is still what we're looking for and advocating, because as you said, it's a 30-day of Ramadan, and then we have a lot of students who are coming in. Even after our discussion, we started looking into stats more effectively on that one Friday prayer, and we're getting to know there are about 900 people come around for one prayer. So again,
how big? Whoops, 900 people for one prayer. How big is your space right
250.
now?
And that's what we're still struggling with, right? So even as an executive, our full team worked hard on trying to get an understanding of how we can move forward with it. And we got to know, okay, there are 900 and we need to move towards a bigger space, at least for one day. Or now when Ramadan is coming for 30 days, we need to still find a space. So I'm not sure how, but our team is effectively working. We have an incredible team, full board of executive directors and volunteers.
And remind me right now what happens then. I mean, if 900 people show up, you have space for 250. Are you having to tell students that they can't participate, or?
Unfortunately, they cannot sit with us and eat, but then they have to, again, we can give them the food and they can leave, but they're not allowed to sit because that would create a hazard space, which we cannot do that too.
So you need space. Not sure how you're going to proceed. You're working on it. And do you have enough food?
So for food, we do. We have amazing community members and great organizations who actually help us out with it. We have great people who come in, either donate the food or they give us the amount as well for us to purchase the food for them. So for that, we have, again, as I said, we have a full team who always work on these things behind the task or behind the scene. They work really hard for us to actually organize everything every single day.
You have to fundraise though, is that right?
Yes. So we do fundraising. We reach out to the community leaders. We reach out to our amazing collaborators or just the organizations that we work with in general.
So much to think about and so much to appreciate about what the two of you are involved in at U of M. Thank you both for coming, and nice to see you again, Aisha.
You too. It was so nice seeing you, Marcia. And also, I wanted to add one point in. So this Islam Awareness Week, it's not only students doing it. We also have really great collaborators, ICNA brothers and sisters, who came in and brought a lot of their hijab for people to try on hijab as well. We have House of Zayd bringing in the thobes to try as well. And I'm not sure
Sister
Sister to Sister for the reword. So they have a whole organization who are bringing in people who can talk about it effectively to the students. So we are happy to not only do it by ourselves, but have a really great hand of people helping us out too.
Nice to mention all the partners that you have.
Yeah.
And thank you, very, very nice to meet you.
Yeah, very nice to meet you as well. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So that was a conversation I had yesterday, actually, with Aisha Sultan, president of U of M's Muslim Student Association, and Barira Cameron, who's the association's manager of student life. You can check out their activities at the University of Manitoba Muslim Student Association on Facebook or at ummsa.org online. They're also on Instagram at um.msa. It is 8:27. It's Thursday morning. It's freezing, -27, and an extreme cold warning. Now, that is for the south and for parts of the north. We will mention this came in very late, but the Evergreen School Division has shut down. No buses, no schools today because of the weather. And we have been previously mentioning that no buses are running in the rural parts of the Brandon School Division. Next news with Heather Walls coming up here on CBC at 8:30. And this week we have been playing Juno nominees from Manitoba. So let's get to another one before the news. The nominees were announced just a couple of days ago, and Tatasqueyak Cree Nation Sebastian Gaskin's on the list. Sebastian Gaskin is nominated for Contemporary Indigenous Artist of the Year. This is the song that got him on the list for Juno. This tune's called Brown Man.
I am a brown man, my skin ain't white. They could pull me from the wreckage and still shoot me in the light. I'm not an animal, I'm not a savage. I'm just a human being who needs to heal from heartache and the sadness. I am a brown man. I am a brown man. Turn off the TV, I don't wanna see it. They play it on repeat, it's just like the ending of the season. The castle is burning, the people are angry, the world is coming to an end, but still I see everybody laughing. I am a brown man. I am a brown man. Someday we're gonna run far away from here. Love coming to the void, wipe away your tears. You've got everything I need. Melt away where you're near. Love, sleep inside my arms. Hide away from your fears. I am a red man, my skin ain't white. They could pull me from the wreckage and still shoot me in the light. I'm not an animal, I'm not a savage. I'm just a human being who needs to heal from the heartache and the sadness. I am a red man.
Wow. Hey, now you know why Sebastian Gaskin was nominated for a Juno for that tune. It is called Brown Man, and the Juno Awards being handed out in March. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. It's minus 27 in Winnipeg. Yes, that extreme cold warning still drags on, and we're expecting the wind chill to feel like minus 43 this morning. Frostbite in minutes. Today's high is minus 20. A survey of staff in Manitoba's Justice Department suggests a majority of Manitoba's Crown prosecutors are suffering from mental health issues. A source shared the 2023 survey results with CBC News. Though CBC did not see the confidential report, details have been confirmed by the union that co-commissioned the study along with the Justice Department. The survey found nearly two-thirds of criminal prosecutors who responded met the diagnostic criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, or depression. Also, 16 out of 150 prosecutors who were surveyed say they had contemplated suicide in the year before the survey. Ben Wickstrom speaks for the Manitoba Association of Crown Attorneys.
It's heartbreaking, obviously, to hear that someone has sort of hit that point where they think that might be sort of a solution to their what is often burnout or other mental health issues that they're facing.
The Prosecutors Union meets with the Justice Minister next week. Well, time to make some noise.
Raise and lower the flag.
And raise your flag. Business has been brisk at the city's only flag store in the past week, set off by the U.S. president's threat of tariffs on Canada. Greg Barker was at the flag shop on Osborne yesterday.
Probably a lot of people. I haven't had a Canadian flag on my fence ever, and now's a good time to do it, so we can all show our feelings about the country.
Anne Harwood bought flags for her window and her planters.
We're not for sale. Yeah, that really hurts. Yeah.
Harwood says it's also important to her to know the flags she bought are made in Canada. Saturday is Flag Day. The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs is raising concerns about a program helping youth who are struggling with mental health issues. AMC says the Manitoba Adolescent Treatment Centre lacks oversight. The concerns come after a First Nations youth was discharged from the program without a diagnosis, still struggling with mental health. The Assembly says they sent a letter to the province. Health Minister Uzoma Asseguera says they contacted the family.
We're taking a look at, the points of contact the families had throughout the healthcare system to ensure that as we move forward, we're meeting the needs of not only this youth and their family, but the needs of families who come into contact with these services.
AMC wants to see independent oversight at the centre and consistent supports for all First Nations communities. The province says it is reviewing the Residential Tenancies Act after complaints some landlords are getting unfair exemptions from rent guidelines. A report by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives says the province allows landlords to raise rents above the annual guideline increases too often. It found some landlords got approval to jack rents up by 18%. Landlords say they must prove their expenses to qualify to charge more. Mintu Sandhu is Public Service Delivery Minister.
We are concerned about what we are seeing, and we want to make sure when we review this act, we get the sides of both sides, renter's side and as well as landlord's side.
The NDP government introduced legislation last fall making it harder for landlords to increase rents above the guideline, but the bill did not become law. RCMP are asking for the public's help after a couple of armed gas station robberies. The first early last Friday morning at a gas station in Toulon. An employee tells police 4 masked suspects, each with a weapon, including a handgun and baseball bat, demanded cash and cigarettes. After getting an undisclosed amount of cash, police say they took off in a dark blue Mercedes-Benz. RCMP believe the same suspects also robbed a gas station in Swan Lake First Nation last Sunday morning. If you know anything, you're asked to contact RCMP or Crime Stoppers. It's a good start for Canada at the Four Nations Face-Off Tournament.
Marner to work. He's in. Marner! It's Marner in overtime!
In Montreal last night, that is the tournament getting underway. Canada defeating Sweden 4-3 in overtime. And Mitch Marner, as you heard, scoring that winning goal. Next up, the United States plays Finland tonight. And then on Saturday, it's Canada against the U.S. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks for the morning, Heather Walls.
Thank you.
And to Megan Ketchison and Aaron Broman, as well as Donna Carrero, Kalkana Mulugeta, Jim Agapito, Chide Akuma, Abby Adiyemi, Corey Funk, Kevin Ipatebo, Robin Summerfield, and Leif Larson. Big thanks to everybody on our teams in various positions to help with the show specifically today. And Corey, take it away with weather and traffic.
Traffic northbound and southbound on Arlington are currently closed between Notre Dame and McDermott due to a fire. Also, PAR between Jarvis Avenue and Stella are closed by the WFPS, and Dufferin between Arlington and Mackenzie also closed. Extreme cold warning in much of the province. Down south, wind chills feel like -40, and up north, northwest Manitoba, feels more like -50. So bundle up. Frostbite in minutes.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Take care, be well. The Currents next on CBC. Talk to you tomorrow.